After the mass shooting that took place here on Saturday, authorities are saying that the alleged shooter posted a hate-filled anti-immigrant screed online. He is a 21-year-old white man from the suburbs of Dallas, and police believe he authored the document that was posted on the web just before the rampage. The screed or manifesto talks about, quote, the Hispanic invasion of Texas. Gene Demby from NPR's Code Switch podcast is with us this morning. Hi there, Gene.
Good morning, David.
So what do you think this attack here in Texas tells us about our country right now?
Well, as some of our colleagues at NPR have reported, the language in that manifesto is remarkably similar to the language the president himself has used. He's talked about immigrants, especially from the southern border, as invaders many times. And just to zoom out a little bit, there was a big public opinion poll from the Public Religion Research Institute last year, and it posed to respondents a question about the country's changing demographics. Now, about 60% of Republicans thought that the U.S. becoming a majority non-white country by 2045 would be mostly negative. So if that's a position held by most of the voters in one of the two major parties, it's clear that this feeling about the browning of America is not some fringe political position. And to be clear, I'm not suggesting that the people who feel this way want to commit violence to that end. But this anxiety over America becoming less white, that's a common, powerful strain in our mainstream politics right now.
But it seems like we should note that President Trump came out and did not just condemn violence. He condemned white supremacy yesterday when he was speaking about the violence that we've seen. So what should we make of that?
So it's actually surprising that it's notable that he's done that, right? Because it's not controversial. It's almost perfunctory for public officials to condemn explicitly racist violence after it happens. And that's been key. So the consensus that white supremacy is a destructive force in American life, that's a relatively recent phenomenon. It's a fragile consensus. And it's one of the most significant achievements of the civil rights movement, which is why it's so important when leaders affirm it, and which was one reason why his response to Charlottesville, that there were good people on both sides, was so striking. And so now the president has shifted back to this sort of pro forma condemnation that comes after incidents like this. But there's the border wall, right? And now the detention facilities on the border, all of which structurally reinforce this fear of brown invaders, again, with legitimate policy and law.
Well, and Democrats have gone so far as to say that the president's words actually have incited violence in this country. Is that a fair argument?
I mean, causality is really tricky here. And just, for the record, the alleged shooter said that his views predate President Trump's election. But, there's all this research that shows a significant surge in reported hate crimes across the country since President Trump's election. But again, it's important for us to remember that this is not new, that white nationalist violence is part of the history of American politics. Like during Jim Crow, there were 4,000 lynchings in the United States. And the lynchings themselves were an extra-legal expression of this official policy position, which is that black people should be inferior and that black people should stay in their place. And one of the reasons that anti-lynching legislation was a non-starter in Washington were reluctant to pick a political fight with Southern lawmakers and with Southern voters. As a practical matter, white nationalism was politically disadvantageous to confront because it was too popular. And so this dynamic of officially sanctioned white nationalism existing next to grisly, extra-legal white nationalist violence, that's always been with us.
NPR's Gene Demby from NPR's Code Switch podcast. Gene, thanks so much.
Thank you, David.
Context of White Supremacy, Gus T. Renegade, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, August 8th, 2019. So I have been told this is our 6th book study on Gavin de Becker's The Gift of Fear: Survival Signals That Protect Us from Violence. We're picking up on chapter 11. I was trying to let him down easy. The audio segment that we heard, that was from NPR just this week, and I had intended to play a different audio report, but then with all of the shootings that happened over the weekend, white killers and their rampages in Texas and Ohio, it brought me back to the main point of the book, because racism, white supremacy, at least according to the initial reports, in some way motivated both of these attacks to some degree. And what I've said consistently has been the thing that white people fear most worldwide, Brexit even, non-white people. I've been saying that the whole time, whether it's in the form of OJ Simpson or some non-white person with watermelon-sized calves who's jumping the border, whatever it is, non-white people are coming to take our stuff, rape our women. We got to do something. That damn OJ Simpson, Al Sharpton is one of them. They're coming to do something. That, I said, is in my view, that is what underlies generally what white people talk about fearing the most, whether it's crime. It's manifested in so many different ways: drugs, border issues, immigrants, sexually transmitted diseases. Invariably, it comes back to the niggers. And so to have that NPR report come out this week, which just further corroborated what I've been saying, I think it's important to keep that in mind as we read, even while conceding that I do think the book has constructive information as it pertains to workplace racism, as it pertains to domestic abuse as well. I know we've had a number of listeners who have talked about constructive information and how some bits of this book would have helped them solve some problems, keep themselves safe, and maybe even keep some other non-white people from harming them. The system of white supremacy absolutely encourages violence against all non-white people, and sometimes non-white people even being violent against other non-white people. That's one of the main ways that this system stays in place. So absolutely, I hope people can kind of dual task as we read, being observant, mindful to the racism, white supremacy, and how that is manifest in the text, in my view. And then also, as you see constructive information that might help you stay safe, help you recognize when there might be a potentially harmful, violent person, white or non-white, that you need to be alert about, outstanding. We can do both. We will get started. Chapter 11, Gavin de Becker's The Gift of Fear, Context of White Supremacy. This is audio segment number 1.
Chapter 11. I was trying to let him down easy. With these words begins a story my office hears several times each month. Before meeting with me, the intelligent young woman may have told it to friends, a psychologist, a private detective, a lawyer, a police officer, maybe even a judge. But the problem persisted. It's the story of a situation that once seemed innocent, or at least manageable, but is now frightening. It's the story of someone who started as a seemingly normal suitor, but was soon revealed to be something else. There are two broad categories of stalking: unwanted pursuit by a stranger, and unwanted pursuit by someone the victim knows. The cases of total strangers fixating on private citizens are, by comparison to other types of stalking, very rare. And they are also the cases least likely to end in violence. Accordingly, I'll be exploring those cases that affect the largest population of victims. Stalking by someone who has romantic aspirations, often someone a woman has met or dated. Though it's fashionable for the news media to report on stalkers, as if they are some unique type of criminal, those who choose regular citizens are not. They're not from Mars. They're from Miami and Boston, San Diego and Brentwood. They're the man our sister dated, the man our company hired, the man our friend married. Against this background, we men must see in them a part of ourselves in order to better understand the issue. Giving talks around the country, I sometimes ask the audience, how many of the men here ever found out where a girl lived or worked by means other than asking her? How many have driven by a girl's house to see what cars were there, or called just to see who answered the phone and then hung up? By the overwhelming show of hands, I've learned that the acceptability of these behaviors is a matter of degree. After one speech, a policeman, who'd been in the audience, asked to talk with me alone. He told me how he realized just then that he had relentlessly pursued a female student at the police academy when he was on the staff there. She said no to him for 18 months, all the while concerned that the rejection would have an impact on her career. She gave me no indication that she wanted a relationship with me, but I never let up, not for a moment, he said. It paid off, though. We got married. I suppose you could say it paid off, but the story tells more about how complicated the issue of romantic pursuit is. It's clear that for women in recent decades, the stakes of resisting romantic attention have risen sharply. Some invisible line exists between what is all right and what is too far. The men and women don't always agree on where to place that line. Victims and their unwanted pursuers never agree, and sometimes victims and the police don't either. Everyone agrees, however, at the point where one of these situations includes violence. But why can we not reach consensus before that? To answer this, I have to recall the images of Dustin Hoffman storming into a church and Demi Moore showing up uninvited at a business meeting. I have to talk about regular, everyday guys and about the dictionary. It may seem that these things aren't related to stalking and unwanted pursuit, but, as I'm sure your intuition has already told you, they are. In the 60s, a movie came out that painted a welcome and lasting picture of how a young man could court a woman. It was The Graduate. In it, Dustin Hoffman dates a girl played by Catherine Ross and then asks her to marry him. She says no, but he doesn't hear it. He waits outside her classes at school and asks again, and then again. Eventually, she writes him a letter saying she's thought it over carefully and decided not to marry him. In fact, she's leaving town and marrying another man. That would seem a pretty clear message. But not in the movies. Hoffman uses stalking techniques to find her. He pretends to be a friend of the groom, then a family member, then a priest. Ultimately, he finds the church and breaks into it just seconds before Catherine Ross is pronounced the wife of another man. He then beats up the bride's father, hits some other people, and wields a large wooden cross against the wedding guests who try to help the family. And what happens? He gets the girl. She runs off with Dustin Hoffman, leaving her family and new husband behind. Also left behind is the notion that a woman should be heard, the notion that no means no, and the notion that a woman has a right to decide who will be in her life. My generation saw in The Graduate that there was one romantic strategy to use above all others: persistence. This same strategy is at the core of every stalking case. Men pursuing unlikely or inappropriate relationships with women and getting them is a common theme promoted in our culture. Just recall Flashdance, Tootsie, The Heartbreak Kid, 10, Blame It on Rio, Honeymoon in Vegas, Indecent Proposal. This Hollywood formula could be called boy wants girl, girl doesn't want boy, boy harasses girl, boy gets girl. Many movies teach that if you just stay with it, even if you offend her, even if she says she wants nothing to do with you, even if you've treated her like trash, and sometimes because you've treated her like trash, you'll get the girl. Even if she's in another relationship, even if you look like Dustin Hoffman, you'll eventually get Catherine Ross or Jessica Lange. Persistence will win the war against all odds. Another of these movies, by the way. Even the seemingly innocuous TV show Cheers touches the topic. Sam's persistent and inappropriate sexual harassment of two female co-workers, 8 years of it, doesn't get him fired or sued. It does, however, get him both women. There's a lesson in real-life stalking cases that young women can benefit from learning. Persistence only proves persistence. It does not prove love. The fact that a romantic pursuer is relentless doesn't mean you are special. It means he is troubled. It isn't news that men and women often speak different languages, but when the stakes are the highest, it's important to remember that men are nice when they pursue, and women are nice when they reject. Naturally, this leads to confusion, and it brings us to the popular practice of letting him down easy. True to what they are taught, rejecting women often say less than they mean. True to what they are taught, men often hear less than what is said. Nowhere is this problem more alarmingly expressed than by the hundreds of thousands of fathers and mothers, older brothers and sisters, movies and television shows that teach most men that when she says no, that's not what she means. Add to this all the women taught to play hard to get, when that's not what they're really feeling. The result is that no can mean many things in this culture. Here's just a small sample. Maybe. Not sure. I've found my man. Not yet. Give me time. Keep trying. There is one book in which the meaning of no is always clear. It is the dictionary. But since Hollywood writers don't seem to use that book very often, we have to. We have to teach young people that no is a complete sentence. This is not as simple as it may appear, given the deep cultural roots of the no-maybe hybrid. It's become part of the contract between men and women, and was even explored by the classic contract theorists, Rousseau and Locke. Rousseau asked, "Why do you consult their words when it is not their mouths that speak?" Locke spoke of a man's winning silent consent by reading it in a woman's eyes, in spite of the mouth's denial. Locke even asserted that a man is protecting a woman's honor when he ignores her refusal. If he then completes his happiness, he is not brutal, he is decent. In Locke's world, date rape wouldn't be a crime at all. It would be a gentleman's act of courtesy. Even if men and women in America spoke the same language, they would still live by much different standards. For example, if a man in a movie researches a woman's schedule, finds out where she lives and works, even goes to her work uninvited, it shows his commitment, proves his love. When Robert Redford does this to Demi Moore in Indecent Proposal, it's adorable. But when she shows up at his work, unannounced, interrupting a business lunch, it's alarming and disruptive. If a man in the movies wants a sexual encounter or applies persistence, he's a regular, everyday guy. But if a woman does the same thing, she's a maniac or a killer. Just recall Fatal Attraction, The King of Comedy, Single White Female, Play Misty for Me, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, and Basic Instinct. When the men pursue, they usually get the girl. When the women pursue, they usually get killed. Popular movies may be reflections of society or designers of society, depending on whom you ask, but either way, they model behavior for us. During the early stages of pursuit situations in movies, and too often in life, the woman is watching and waiting, fitting into the expectations of an overly invested man. She isn't heard or recognized. She is the screen upon which the man projects his needs and his idea of what she should be. Stalking is how some men raise the stakes when women don't play along. It's a crime of power, control, and intimidation very similar to date rape. In fact, many cases of date stalking could be described as extended rapes. They take away freedom, and they honor the desires of the man and disregard the wishes of the woman. Whether he's an estranged husband, an ex-boyfriend, a one-time date, or an unwanted suitor, the stalker enforces our culture's cruelest rule, which is that women are not allowed to decide who will be in their lives. It quickly becomes clear that we have something worse than just a double standard. We have a dangerous standard. I've successfully lobbied and testified for stalking laws in several states, but I would trade them all for a high school class that would teach young men how to hear no, and teach young women that it's all right to explicitly reject. The curriculum would also include strategies for getting away. Perhaps, needless to say, the class would not be called Letting Him Down Easy. If the culture taught and then allowed women to explicitly reject and to say no, or if more women took that power early in every relationship, stalking cases would decline dramatically. Looking for Mr. Right has taken on far greater significance than getting rid of Mr. Wrong. So women are not taught how to get out of relationships. That high school class would stress the one rule that applies to all types of unwanted pursuit. Do not negotiate. Once a woman has made the decision that she doesn't want a relationship with a particular man, it needs to be said one time, explicitly. Almost any contact after that rejection will be seen as negotiation. If a woman tells a man over and over again that she doesn't want to talk to him, that is talking to him. And every time she does it, she betrays her resolve in the matter. If you tell someone 10 times that you don't want to talk to him, you are talking to him 9 more times than you wanted to. When a woman gets 30 messages from a pursuer and doesn't call him back, but then finally gives in and returns his calls, no matter what she says, he learns that the cost of reaching her is leaving 30 messages. For this type of man, any contact will be seen as progress. Of course, some victims are worried that by not responding they'll provoke him, so they tried letting him down easy. Often the result is that he believes she is conflicted, uncertain, really likes him, but just doesn't know it yet. When a woman rejects someone who has a crush on her and she says, "It's just that I don't want to be in a relationship right now," he hears only the words, "right now." To him, this means she'll want to be in a relationship later. The rejection should be, "I don't want to be in a relationship with you." Unless it's just that clear, and sometimes even when it is, he doesn't hear it. If she says, "You're a great guy and you have a lot to offer, but I'm not the one for you. My head's just not in the right place these days," he thinks, "She really likes me. It's just that she's confused. I've got to prove to her that she's the one for me." When a woman explains why she is rejecting, this type of man will challenge every reason she offers. I suggest that women never explain why they don't want a relationship, but simply make clear that they have thought it over, that this is their decision, and that they expect the man to respect it. Why would a woman explain intimate aspects of her life, plans, and romantic choices to someone she doesn't want a relationship with? A rejection based on any condition, say that she wants to move to another city, just gives them something to challenge. Conditional rejections are not rejections. They are discussions. The astute opening scene of the film Tootsie illustrates well why conditional rejections don't work. Dustin Hoffman plays an actor reading lines at an audition. A voice from offstage tells him he isn't getting the part. Voice: "The reading was fine. You're just the wrong height." Hoffman: "Oh, I can be taller." Voice: "No, you don't understand. We're looking for somebody shorter." Hoffman: "Oh, well, look, I don't have to be this tall. See, I'm wearing lifts. I could be shorter." Voice: "I know, but really, we're looking for somebody different." Hoffman: "I can be different." Voice: "We're looking for somebody else. Okay?" This last line offers no reasons and begs no negotiations. But women in this culture are virtually prohibited from speaking it. They're taught that speaking it clearly and early may lead to unpopularity, banishment, anger, and even violence. Let's imagine a woman has let pass several opportunities to pursue a relationship with a suitor. Every hint, response, action, and inaction has communicated that she is not interested. If the man still pursues at this point, though it will doubtless appear harsh to some, it's time for an unconditional and explicit rejection. Because I know that few American men have heard it, and few women have spoken it. Here's what an unconditional and explicit rejection sounds like. No matter what you may have assumed till now, and no matter for what reason you assumed it, I have no romantic interest in you whatsoever. I am certain I never will. I expect that knowing this, you'll put your attention elsewhere, which I understand because that's what I intend to do. There is only one appropriate reaction to this: acceptance. However the man communicates it, the basic concept would ideally be, "I hear you, I understand, and while I'm disappointed, I will certainly respect your decision." I said there's only one appropriate reaction. Unfortunately, there are hundreds of inappropriate reactions, and while they take many forms, their basic message is, "I do not accept your decision." If a man aggressively debates, doubts, negotiates, or attempts to change your mind, it should be recognized for what it is. It should be clear that, 1. She made the right decision about this man. Instead of her resolve being challenged by his response, it should be strengthened. 2. She obviously would not want a relationship with someone who does not hear what she says and who does not recognize her feelings. 3. If he failed to understand a message this clear and explicit, his reaction to anything ambiguous or to being let down easy can only be imagined. Unwanted pursuers may escalate their behavior to include such things as persistent phone calls and messages, showing up uninvited at a woman's work, school, or home, following her, and trying to enlist her friends or family in his campaign. If any of these things happens, assuming that the woman has communicated one explicit rejection, it is very important that no further detectable response be given. When a woman communicates again with someone she has explicitly rejected, her actions don't match her words. The man is able to choose which communications, actions versus words, actually represent the woman's feelings. Not surprisingly, he usually chooses the ones that serve him. Often such a man will leave phone messages that ostensibly offer closure, but that are actually crudely concealed efforts to get a response. And remember, he views any response as progress. Message. Hi, it's Brian. Listen, I'm moving back to Houston, but I can't leave town without an opportunity to see you again. All I'm asking for is a chance to say goodbye. That's all. Just a fast meeting, and then I'm gone. Best response? No response. Message. Listen, it's Brian. This is the last call you'll ever get from me. This line, though spoken often by stalkers, is rarely true. It's urgent I speak with you. Best response? No response. When a woman is stalked by a person she dated, she may have to endure some judgment from people who learn about her situation. You must have encouraged the guy in some way. You must be the kind of woman who enjoys being pursued, etc. Someone will also doubtless give her the conventional wisdom on stalking, which should be called conventional unwisdom. It will include, as if it is some creative plan, change your phone number. In fact, our office does not recommend this strategy because, as any victim will tell you, the stalker always manages to get the new number. A better plan is for the woman to get a second phone line, give the new number to the people she wants to hear from, and leave the old number with an answering machine or voicemail so that the stalker is not even aware she has another number. She can check her messages, and when she receives calls from people she wants to speak with, she can call them back and give them her new number. Eventually, the only person leaving messages on the old number is the unwanted pursuer. In this way, his calls are documented. Keep the messages. And more importantly, each time he leaves a message, he gets a message, that she can avoid the temptation to respond to his manipulations. We also suggest that the outgoing message be recorded by a female friend, because he may be calling just to hear his object's voice. While people believe that an outgoing message with a male voice will lead the pursuer to believe his victim is in a new relationship, more commonly, it leads him to investigate further. Stalkers are, by definition, people who don't give up easily. They're people who don't let go. More accurately, the vast majority of them are people who don't let go at the point most of us would, but who ultimately do let go if their victims avoid engaging them. Usually, they have to attach a tentacle to someone else before detaching all the tentacles from their current object. An axiom of the stalking dynamic: men who cannot let go choose women who cannot say no. Most victims will concede that even though they wanted to, they were initially reluctant to explicitly reject. Often the niceness or delicacy of a woman's rejection is taken as affection. Demonstrating this, and proving that nobody is exempt from these situations, is Kathleen Kruger, the wife of United States Senator Bob Kruger. She could not shake the unwanted pursuer who had once piloted her husband's campaign plane. When Mrs. Kruger described her case to me, she eloquently explained it from the stalker's perspective. We were nice to him, not unusually so, but it was obviously a big deal to him. He took it as love. I guess when you're starving, even a morsel seems like a feast. In cases in which the pursuer has initially gotten what he perceived as favorable attention, or in which he has actually dated or had a relationship with his victim, he may be so desperate to hold on that he'll settle for any kind of contact. Though he'd rather be her boyfriend, he'll accept being just a friend. Eventually, though he'd rather be a friend. He'll accept being an enemy if that's the only position available. As a stalking ex-boyfriend wrote to a young client of ours, "You'll be thinking of me. You may not be thinking good thoughts, but you'll be thinking of me." Another rule to be taught in the Getting Rid of Mr. Wrong class would be, the way to stop contact is to stop contact. As I noted above, I suggest one explicit rejection, and after that, absolutely no contact. If you call the pursuer back, or agree to meet, or send him a note, or have somebody warn him off, you buy another 6 weeks of his unwanted pursuit. Some victims think it'll help to have a male friend, new boyfriend, or a male family member tell the stalker to stop. Most who try this learn that the stalker takes it as evidence that his love object must be conflicted. Otherwise, she'd have told him herself. Sending the police to warn off a pursuer may seem the obvious thing to do, but it rarely has the desired effect. Though the behavior of pursuers may be alarming, most have not broken the law, so the police have few options. When police visit him and say, in effect, "Cut this out or you'll get into trouble," the pursuer intuitively knows that if they could have arrested him, they would have arrested him. So what's the result of the visit? Well, the greatest possible weapon in this victim's arsenal, sending the police after him, came and went without a problem. The cops stopped by, they talked to him, and they left. Who got stronger, the victim or the pursuer? To be clear, I feel the police should be involved when there is an actionable crime that, if prosecuted, would result in improving the victim's safety or putting a high cost on the stalker's behavior. But the first time a stalker should see police is when they show up to arrest him, not when they stop by to chat. Pursuers are, in a very real sense, detoxing from an addiction to the relationship. It's similar to the dynamic in many domestic violence situations in which both partners are addicted to the relationship. In date-stalking cases, however, it's usually one-sided. The stalker is the addict, and his object is the drug. Small doses of that drug don't wean him, they engage him. The way to force him out of this addiction, as with most addictions, is abstinence, cold turkey, no contact from her, no contact from her designates, and no contact about her. As with domestic violence situations, victims will often be advised that they must do something, police intervention, warning to their stalkers. From the larger social point of view, such advice might be correct. If one thinks of a stalker as a danger to society, a virtual tiger lurking around the corner, waiting to victimize someone, then it may be true that somebody should do something about it. But nobody is obligated to volunteer for that fight, particularly if it's avoidable. If one could know and warn a stalking victim that as she rounds the next corner she'll be attacked, which option makes more sense? Go around the corner or take another route? If the fight is avoidable, and it's my wife, my daughter, my friend, or my client, I would recommend avoidance first. That's because fighting will always be available. But it isn't always possible to go back to avoidance once a war is underway. Victims of stalking will also hear the same conventional wisdom that is offered to battered women. Get a restraining order. Here, as with battered wives, it's important to evaluate which cases might be improved by court intervention and which might be worsened. Much depends upon how escalated the case is and how much emotional investment has been made by the stalker. If he has been actively pursuing the same victim for years and has already ignored warnings and interventions, then a restraining order isn't likely to help. Generally speaking, court orders that are introduced early carry less risk than those introduced after the stalker has made a significant emotional investment or introduced threats and other sinister behavior. Restraining orders obtained soon after a pursuer has ignored a single explicit rejection will carry more clout and less risk than those obtained after many months or years of stalking. There is a category of stalker for which court orders frequently help, or at least aren't dangerous. It is the one we call the naive pursuer. He's a person who simply does not realize the inappropriateness of his behavior. He might think, I'm in love with this person. Accordingly, this is a love relationship, and I'm acting the way people in love act. This type of unwanted pursuer is generally rational, though perhaps a bit thick and unsophisticated. Not all naive pursuers are seeking romantic relationships. Some are persistently seeking to be hired for a job or to learn why they were not hired for a job, why their idea was not accepted, why their manuscript was rejected, etc. The naive pursuer is usually distinguishable from conventional stalkers by his lack of machismo and his lack of anger at being rejected. He just seems to go along happily believing he's courting someone. He stays with it until someone makes completely clear to him that his approach is inappropriate, unacceptable, and counterproductive. This isn't always easy, but it's usually safe to try. Because victims are understandably frustrated and angry, they may look to a court order to do any of the following things: destroy, expose, threaten, avenge, change, humiliate. Note that the acronym for this list is also the only goal that makes sense from a safety point of view, and that is to detach, to have the guy out of your life. As with battered women, the restraining order may move you closer to that goal, or it may move you farther away. It's one management plan, but not the only one. The type of stalker whom a woman has briefly dated, as opposed to a stranger she's never met, is quite similar to the controlling or battering husband. Though he's far less likely to introduce violence, his strategies include acting pathetic to exploit a victim's sympathy or guilt, calling on supposed promises or commitments, annoying a victim so much that she gives in and continues seeing him, and finally, the use of fear through intimidating statements and actions, threats, vandalism, slashing tires, etc. Recall Catherine, who asked me if there was a list of warning signs about men who might later become a problem. I'll repeat her story, this time pointing out the warning signs. I dated this guy named Brian. We met at a party of a friend of mine. And he must have asked somebody there for my number, researching the victim. Before I even got home, he'd left me 3 messages. Overly invested. I told him I didn't want to go out with him, but he was so enthusiastic about it that I really didn't have any choice. Men who cannot let go choose women who cannot say no. In the beginning, he was super attentive. Always seemed to know what I wanted. He remembered everything I ever said. Hyper-attentiveness. It was flattering, but it also made me uncomfortable. Victim intuitively feels uncomfortable. Like when he remembered that I once mentioned needing more space for my books, he just showed up one day with shelves and all the stuff and just put them up. Offering unsolicited help. Loan sharking. I couldn't say no. And he read so much into whatever I said. Once he asked if I'd go to a basketball game with him, and I said, maybe. He later said, "You promised," projecting onto others emotions or commitments that are not present. Also, he talked about serious things so early, like living together and marriage and children. Whirlwind pace, placing issues on the agenda prematurely. He started with jokes about that stuff the first time we went out. And later, he wasn't joking. Or when he suggested that I have a phone in my car. I wasn't sure I even wanted a car phone. But he borrowed my car and just had one installed. Loan sharking. It was a gift, so what could I say? And of course he called me whenever I was in the car, monitoring activity and whereabouts. And he was so adamant that I never speak to my ex-boyfriend on that car phone. Later he got angry if I spoke to my ex at all. Jealousy. There were also a couple of my friends he didn't like me to see, isolating her from friends. And he stopped spending time with any of his own friends, making another person responsible to be one's whole social world. Finally, when I told him I didn't want to be his girlfriend, he refused to hear it. Refusing to hear no. All this is done on autopilot by the stalker. who seeks to control the other person so she can't leave him. Being in control is an alternative to being loved, and since his identity is so precariously dependent on a relationship, he carefully shores up every possible leak. In so doing, he also strangles the life out of the relationship, ensuring that it could never be what he says, and maybe even believes he wants. Brian would not pursue a woman who could really say and mean no, though he is very interested in one who initially says no and then gives in. I assure you that Brian tested Catherine on this point within minutes of meeting her. Brian: "Can I get you something to drink?" Catherine: "No, but thank you." Brian: "Aw, come on. What do you have?" Catherine: "Well, I could have a soft drink, I guess." This may appear to be a minor exchange, but it's actually a very significant test. Brian found something she said no to, tried a light persuasion, and Catherine gave in, perhaps just because she wanted to be nice. He will next try one a notch more significant, and then another, and finally he's found someone he can control. The exchange about the drink is the same as the exchange they will later have about dating, and later about breaking up. It becomes an unspoken agreement that he will drive and she will be the passenger. The trouble comes when she tries to renegotiate that agreement. Popular news stories would have us believe that stalking is like a virus that strikes its victims without warning. But Catherine, like most victims, got a signal of discomfort from the beginning and ignored it. Nearly every victim I've ever spoken with stayed in even after she wanted out. It doesn't have to be that way. Women can follow those early signals of intuition right from the start. Dating carries several risks: the risk of disappointment, the risk of boredom, the risk of rejection, and the risk of letting some troubled, scary man into your life. The whole process is most similar to an audition, except that the stakes are higher. A date might look like the audition in Tootsie, in which the man wants the part so badly that he'll do anything to get it. Or it can be an opportunity for the woman to evaluate important pre-incident indicators. Doesn't sound romantic? Well, daters are doing an evaluation anyway. They're just doing it badly. I'm suggesting only that the evaluation be conscious and informed. The woman can steer the conversation to the man's last breakup and evaluate how he describes it. Does he accept responsibility for his part? Is he still invested? Was he slow to let go, slow to hear what the woman communicated? Has he let go yet? Who broke up with whom? This last question is an important one, because stalkers are rarely the ones who initiate breakups. Has he had several love-at-first-sight relationships, falling for people in a big way based on just a little exposure to them, particularly if this is a pattern, is a valuable pin. A woman can explore a new date's perception of male and female roles as well as his ideas about commitment, obsession, and freedom. A woman can observe if and how the man tries to change her mind, even on little things. I'm not proposing a checklist of blunt questions, but I am suggesting that all the information is there to be mined through artful conversation. The final lesson in that ideal class for young men and women would center on the fact that, contrary to the scary and alarming stories shown on the local news, very few date-stalking situations end in violence. The news people would have you believe that if you're being stalked, you'd better get your will in order. But this level of alarm is usually inappropriate. Date stalkers don't jump from nonviolent harassment to homicide without escalations along the way. Escalations that are almost always apparent, or at least detectable. To avoid these situations, listen to yourself right from the start. To avoid escalation, if you are already in a stalking situation, listen to yourself at every step along the way. When it comes to date stalkers, your intuition is now loaded. So listen. The families of those date stalkers who physically harmed their victims, like the families of the other criminals discussed in this book, have had to face a question no parent ever wants to ask. Why did our child grow up to be violent? The answers can help parents and others see the warning signs and patterns years before they get that tragic phone call or visit from the police. I've learned a lot about this from young people who killed others, some who killed themselves, and as you'll see in the next chapter, one who did a little of both. Chapter 12. Fear of Children. My father did not tell me how to live. He lived, and let me watch him do it. Clarence Buddington Kelland. The staff at St. Augustine Church was busy preparing for its biggest day of the year. Those who'd been around for a while correctly predicted a full chapel, but their prediction of a congregation gathered in a happy anticipation of Christmas was very wrong. This year it would be more like a funeral, though different in one important respect. Mourners in a church are usually far from where their loved ones died, but those gathered at St. Augustine's that Christmas Eve would be just a few feet from where the bodies were found. One dead, one near dead. Everyone at the Mass knew about the grisly discovery, but not one person could claim to understand why two 18-year-old boys would stand in the shadow of their church and each shoot himself in the mouth with a sawed-off shotgun. After every violent tragedy, loved ones are forced to take a hard look at everything in their lives. They begin an awful and usually unrewarding search for responsibility. Family members cluster at the two far ends of the spectrum, those who blame themselves and those who blame others. The kids their children spent time with, the other parent, the jilting girlfriend, someone will invariably be doused with the family's shame and rage and guilt. Often a parent will blame the person who sold a child drugs, but James Vance's mother went much farther from home. She blamed a heavy metal rock band named Judas Priest, and she blamed the mom-and-pop record store that sold their records. She insisted the proprietors should have predicted that the album Stained Class would compel her son to enter into a suicide pact with his friend Ray. She felt the store should have warned the boys about the lethality of that album. When I was asked to testify in the case on behalf of the owners of the record store, I anticipated an interesting study into the media's impact on violence. I did not expect it to be the only case of my career I would later wish I hadn't taken. I had volunteered for many unpleasant explorations and performed with fairly unhesitating professionalism, but when the time came, I did not want to go into that churchyard. I did not want to feel the quiet depression and grief of Ray's mother, nor challenge Mrs. Vance's strong denial. I did not want to study the autopsy reports, nor see the photos, nor come to learn the details of this sad story. But I did it all, and James Vance ended up as my unwitting and unlikely guide into the lives and experiences of many young Americans. From him, I learned how they feel about drugs, alcohol, television, ambition, intimacy, and crime. He would help me answer the question of so many parents. What are the warning signs that my child might be prone to violence? From the vantage point of that churchyard, I saw young people as I'd never seen them before. Much of what James taught me applies to gang violence, but it also helps explain the sometimes more frightening behavior of middle-class young men whose brutality takes everyone by surprise. James Vance was obsessed with Judas Priest, attracted to the sinister and violent nature of their music and public persona. He liked the demonic themes of the artwork on their album covers, the monsters and gore, so at the instant he saw Ray shoot himself in the head, the sheer gruesomeness of it did not impress him. Like too many other young Americans, he had been getting comfortable with graphic violence for a long time. The images of gory skulls were fairly mundane to him. Standing in the churchyard, he looked at his friend's body and for a moment considered breaking the suicide pact they'd made. But then he figured that if he didn't shoot himself, he'd get blamed for Ray's death anyway, so he reached down into the blood, picked up the shotgun, put it in his mouth, and pulled the trigger. But he did not die. In his less than enthusiastic positioning of that shotgun in his mouth, he failed to kill himself, but succeeded at creating an unsettling irony. He became as frightening to behold as anything that ever appeared on the cover of a Judas Priest album. In his hesitation to murder himself, James shot off the bottom of his face. His chin, jaw, tongue, and teeth were all gone, blown around that churchyard. I cannot describe how he looked, and I also cannot forget it. I've seen my share of alarming autopsy photos of people so injured that death was the only possible result, people so injured that death was probably a relief. But something about James Vance living in a body damaged more than enough to be dead was profoundly disturbing. Even lawyers who thought they'd seen it all were shaken when he arrived at depositions, a towel wrapped around his neck to catch saliva that ran freely from where the bottom of his face had been. His appearance had become a metaphor for what had been going on inside him. He had wanted to be menacing and frightening. He had aspired to the specialness he thought violence could bring him. And he got there. Completely. Aided by his mother, who helped interpret his unusual speech during the days he was questioned, James told lawyers about his case and also about his time. I listened carefully. I learned that he and Ray had wanted to do something big and bad, though not necessarily commit suicide. It was the violence they wanted, not the end of life. They had considered going on a shooting spree at a nearby shopping center. Unlike thousands of teens who commit suicide, they were not despondent that night. They were wild. High on drugs and alcohol, their choice of music blaring, they destroyed everything in Ray's room, then jumped out the window with the shotgun and ran through the streets toward the church. They were not unique among young people who commit terrible violences, and neither were their families. Mrs. Vance was not the only parent to bring a lawsuit against a rock band. In fact, such suits are becoming fairly frequent. During the Vance case, there were plenty of other teenagers around the country who did horrible things. 3 boys in a small Missouri town, one of them the student body president, invited their friend Stephen Newberry to go out in the woods with them to kill something. Stephen wasn't told that he was the something, though that became apparent when they began beating him with baseball bats. He asked them why, and they explained to the near-dead boy, "Because it's fun, Steve." Within hours they were caught and confessed matter-of-factly to murder. Like James Vance, they were fans of heavy metal, but these teenagers did not blame a musical group. They jumped right over Judas Priest and went directly to blaming Satan. Just like Michael Paiswitz, who said the devil instructed him to stab a 3-year-old to death. Just like Susan and Michael Carson, who blamed Allah for telling them to kill people. But families can't sue Satan or Allah, so record stores and musical groups are sometimes all they've got. James Vance referred to the members of the band as metal gods. He said they were his Bible and that he was the defender of the Judas Priest faith. Of his relationship with these people he'd never met, he said, "It was like a marriage, intimacy that developed over a period of time, and it was until death do us part." Can specific media products compel people to violence that they would otherwise have not committed? This is perhaps a reasonable question. Could that record store have predicted that the Stained Class album was dangerous and would lead to the shootings? This is a less reasonable question, but great controversies are often tested at the outside edges of an issue. When researchers in my office studied hazards that were supposedly associated with music albums, they found one man who had gotten sick after ingesting a vinyl record, another who had a heart attack while dancing to some jaunty polka music, another who made a weapon out of shards from a broken record. The range of things people might do with any product makes it next to impossible to foresee all risks. Researchers also found an article with a headline that at first seemed relevant. Man killed while listening to heavy metal music. The victim, it turned out, was walking along listening to an Ozzy Osbourne tape on headphones when he was struck by a train. On the news clipping, a dark-humored associate of mine had written the words, "Killed by heavy metal," literally. The heavy metal in trains surely has resulted in many more deaths than the heavy metal in music, even so-called death metal music. The group Judas Priest did not create James Vance, of course, but in a sense, he created them. When he was asked about a particular lyric, "They bathed him and clothed him and fed him by hand," he recited it as, "They bathed him, they clothed him, and fed him a hand." So he had done more than just react to the songs. He had actually rewritten them, taken a lyric about someone being cared for and turned it into something about cannibalism. Even his admiration was expressed in violent terms. James said he was so enamored of the band that he would do anything for them. Kill many people or shoot the president through the head. He told lawyers that if the band had said, "Let's see who can kill the most people," he would have gone out and done something terrible. In fact, the band said no such thing, and he did something terrible anyway. As part of my work on the case, I studied 56 other cases involving young people who involved a music star in their violent acts, suicides, attempted suicides, or suicide threats. This sampling provides a window through which to view the topic. A teenager asked a famous singer to send him a gun he could use to commit suicide. A young man threatened to commit suicide unless a female recording artist visited him. He wrote to her, "I even tried to put myself into a coma in hopes that my mom would get a hold of you and you would come see me." A man took an overdose of pills in order to travel through time and reach a recording artist. A man wrote to a female recording artist, "If you don't marry me, I'll take an overdose." In a turning of the legal liability tables, he sent along the lyrics to a song he had written for her entitled, "Suicide is on My Mind." A young man who believed that a female recording artist was his wife and that she was hiding from him attempted suicide by cutting his wrists. A young man wrote to a media star in terms reminiscent of James Vance. "I smoke pot and listen to rock music. Basically, my story is in the vinyl. Life as I live it really isn't worth it. I'll tell you this, when I attempt suicide, it won't be an attempt." Could the parents of all these people and the thousands like them reasonably blame some distant media star for the challenges their families faced, or would the answers be found closer to home? To explore that, I started a hypothetical list of the 100 most significant influences, the pins that might precede teen violence. An addiction to media products is somewhere on that list, but alcohol and drugs are closer to the top. They, unlike media products, are proven and intended to affect the perceptions and behavior of all people who ingest them. James Vance offered support for this position when he described an acquaintance who had attempted suicide a number of times. Asked if that individual had a drug problem, he replied, "Yes, that goes hand in hand." He also stated, "An alcoholic is a very violent individual, and when you drink excessively, you become violent, and that has been my life experience." I wonder with whom he gained that experience. The list of pins includes a fascination with violence and guns, which was a central part of James's personality, to the point of his planning to become a gunsmith. Both he and Ray regularly went target shooting and played games involving guns. As part of what James called his training to be a mercenary, he often played war, pretending to be in gunfights. There would be 2 cops and 1 criminal. The criminal would be behind you and would have to flush you out. You know, how cops check a house out? 99% of the time, I always got both of the cops. About his less violent friend Ray, he said, "I would usually get him because, just watching TV, you learn. TV is a really good teacher." James said he watched the news and saw a lot of violence and killing and fighting go on. He summarized all this succinctly. "Violence excited me." Finally, he unknowingly described one of the leading pins for attention-getting violent acts. He said he felt ignored for 20 years. Explaining how Judas Priest motivated the shootings, he said that he perceived the song Hero's End to be about how one has to die to be recognized. When James was asked if anything other than the lyrics might have caused the shootings, he responded, "A bad relationship, the stars being right, the tide being out? No." Though he was being sarcastic, any of these is probably as reasonable as blaming the lyrics on an album for what happened. For once he excluded family life and parenting from the inquiry, he might as well have cited anything. By pointing his trigger finger at a rock band, James washed away all of the scrutiny that might reasonably have been focused on himself, his family, or even his society. After all, James was not the only young man who spent more time consuming media products than he spent on any other activity in his waking life. He was an avid patron of the violence division of the entertainment industry. In his book, Selling Out America's Children, David Walsh likens it to a guest in our families that advocates violence, but we don't throw him out. He notes that since children learn by modeling and imitation, the 200,000 acts of violence they will witness in the media by age 18 pose a serious problem. Park Dietz has said that the symbolic violence in an hour-long episode of a violent television show does more harm when summed up over the millions of participants than a single murder of the usual variety. Finally, writer and mother Carrie Fisher says that television exposes children to behavior that man spent centuries protecting them from. The content of media products matters, but the amount may matter more. Whether it is watching television too much, playing video games too much, listening to too much rock music, or for that matter, listening to too much classical music. It isn't only the behavior this consumption promotes that concerns me. It's the behavior it prevents, most notably human interaction. I would admittedly be happier if my children chose Tina Turner or Elton John or K.D. Lang over Judas Priest. But the bigger issue arises when media consumption replaces the rest of life. No matter what their choice of music, in the lives of too many teenagers, recognition is more meaningful than accomplishment. And as it was for James, recognition is available through violence. With the pull of a trigger, a young person whose upbringing has not invested him with self-worth can become significant and unignorable. If you took away James's obsession with Judas Priest, you would have just another young man with goals and ambitions that changed day to day, with unrealistic expectations of the world, and without the perseverance or self-discipline to succeed at any endeavor. At various times, James planned to write a book, be a gunsmith, be a member of a band, even be a postal worker. But in the end, he will be most remembered for just a few seconds in his life. A few seconds of barbarism in a churchyard. The court eventually decided that the proprietors of the record store could not have predicted the shootings. But James Vance did not get to finish his search for someone to blame. He died, finally, from that single shotgun blast to the head, though the complications took a long time to kill him, longer than anyone could have expected. I never got to ask James about his early years, and never learned about the childhood that the lawsuit had so effectively eclipsed.
Context of White Supremacy. That will do it for the first audio segment. And we did not come to a clean end of Chapter 12. We're still Chapter 12, Fear of Children, Violent Children in parentheses. Kind of a break point. We have about half of the chapter remaining, I guess a little bit more than half of this chapter remaining. We should get to that for the second audio segment. Before we get to the callers, I'll give out the number and all that, read emails. Toni Morrison, victim of white supremacy, prolific author, winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, passed away this week at the age of 88. Monumental loss. I'm a huge fan of Toni Morrison. We read The Bluest Eye on the C.O.W.S book club. Actually, that is the second book that we read on the C.O.W.S book club. 7 years plus that we've had the book club now, and that was book number 2 when we started out. I am still thinking. We had people suggest reading some of these manifestos that some of these white killers have written. We just got another new so-called manifesto from this past week's massacres. But that was suggested to have that be a study session selection. I was thinking we could read Toni Morrison's Tar Baby, which is all about white supremacy, racism. Many of her books are. Lots to pick from. I even heard another book as well that I was thinking of, but we'll have to think it out. We should definitely revisit Toni Morrison. She has so many books in her library of what she was able to devote her time to doing, creating literature. We should definitely pick out something else from Toni Morrison to read as well. If it's not this next book, something soon. And we will be finishing up with Gift of Fear in about the next, I think, 2 weeks. We are right closing in on the finish line. But just to make sure, acknowledge the passing of Miss Morrison, phenomenal author, and again, using her talents to address white supremacy, racism. Go back in the archives for The Bluest Eye. I posted it this past week after I learned of her transition. With that, the number 605-313-5164, the code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Number again, 605-313-5164, the code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. There is an audio recording. One thing I'll share before I get to the callers. There's an audio recording from 1999. It's on YouTube. It's Mr. Gavin de Becker, and he is talking about school shootings. This talk that he was giving that's online, it was within months of the Columbine massacre in Colorado. 2 white boys, males, instigated the attack and killed a lot of their classmates. I even saw one report where a white female student said that they killed a black guy because he was black, and they didn't even have a whole lot of black students at this school, high school. But anyway, he's in the video. He's talking about shootings and signs, how you can detect them, and what things to be on the lookout for. A lot of the information that's in this text. But he was talking about the Columbine shooters specifically, and he said that it's interesting that one of them, I believe it was Harris. I might be wrong, but I think it was Harris. He said that he failed the exam and he was not able to get into military service. And he said that's, ironic might be the correct word, or it's striking, to look back on it, to think that he was not qualified for military service. Says Mr. de Becker, he says he, went and had so much gusto about guns and to go in and do all this killing. You would think he would be fit to go in to Iraq or someplace and kill, and he said specifically, and kill brown people. He didn't just say kill Iraqis. He didn't say, foreign combatants or whatever other evildoers, any of the other language. He said, and kill brown people. It was so striking. I said, I got to make that our audio segment for next week. If it is worth checking out, I'll post the video so that you can watch it. It's from 20 years ago, 1999. And it, even at this particular time period, to be checking out a clip like that, I am sure Gavin de Becker has done some interviews this week since the shootings that happened this past weekend. To be reading this book at this particular time is pretty interesting as well, because you hear many of the same talking points, or at least I do, and some of the language about these events happening and were the signals ignored, pins, as he called them, were they ignored in some of these cases? It's striking. If folks have any thoughts on that, reflecting, certainly we can't be watching events that are of this magnitude and ignoring the parallel to what we are reading right here. If folks have thoughts or anything stood out that reminded them directly of what we are reading, the fact that this book written 1997, we could be talking about things that happened 2 to 3 days ago. Star 61, if you have comments to share, folks who dialed in with a hand up, line should be open. Proceed.
Yes, may I be heard?
Greetings, Mr. Demery 4.
Yes, greetings, Gus. Greetings to the other callers and listeners. To answer your question first, it does seem a strange coincidence that we would be reading this book at the very time when we had two shootings that close together. And what I've noticed is they reported that they were both racially, I don't, the exact words on how they put it, but we know that these people meant to bring harm to non-white people, both of them. And there were some pre-indicators. The mom tried to contact the police of one of the guys when he was buying automatic weapons. That was to no avail. The other one was with his sister, I think, when he parted, went one way and she went another. And he ended up, I think, wounding his sister in a shootout. But people just not saying anything and having information or knowing something and then sometimes saying something and then not being taken serious by law enforcement. That seems to be a big problem. And media does play a big part because of the glamorization of violence and the excitement of copycat killings, and then this rhetoric, the racial rhetoric that the president is putting out there, and it's exciting the pathological instincts of a lot of whites that think that they have been done out of something, or that they want to ensure that the browning of America does not take place. But in this reading, the first in chapter 11, it's like he took a parting shot at OJ when he said that though it is fashionable for the news media to report on stalkers as if they were some unique type of criminal, those who choose regular citizens are not. They're not from Mars. They're from Miami, Boston, San Diego, and Brentwood. I think that when he put that Brentwood in there, that was a direct shot at OJ. One last shot. And he said, they are the man our sisters dated, the man our company hired, and the man our friends married. And like you say, Gus, I think that they should, these authors should keep it plain and no pussyfooting around and be honest. If he has a large corporation that advises, a firm that advises large corporations and businesses, even the government, on threat assessment, what is stopping him from initiating some programs in the school, like he said here, that he would give up, I'll see how he put that, Even talks all over the country. And I guess speaking in Congress and all this, he give all that up, to just instruct some school kids. I don't think it's anything that's holding him back if he was honest about that. And getting into a little bit of what he was saying, it seems like valuable information that it's like common sense that people should already know. But there's no clear definition of what a stalker is. I guess, to my understanding, it said in the book, it said stalkers are by definition people who don't give up easily. They are people who don't let go. More accurately, the vast majority of them are people who don't let go at the point most of us would, but who ultimately do let go if the victims avoid engaging them. But I don't know, it seems kind of vague to me. I mean, I guess you wouldn't have to meet too many criteria before it would become stalking. But he mentioned a state senate, United States Senator Bob Kruger and his wife Kathleen. I guess in that pilot that was part of his campaign, got a little close to them, coming by their house, making phone calls, knocking on the door early in the morning. But it seems like a lot of that left out because a senator, even retired, would have access to security, and they would quickly take care of that. But I got some more stuff, but I'll hold out on the chapter 12 stuff. Let somebody else get a chance. Thanks, Gus, for taking the call.
Much obliged, Mr. Demery, for great observation about Brentwood and probably being another snipe at the juice. I would be willing to wager a handsome sum that there will probably be at least one more jab before we get to the end of the book. I don't think he is going to let that one go. He's got enough pages left. One more. Other folks who dialed in, if you have comments, questions, line should be open. Proceed.
Can I be heard?
Greetings, Thomas, in New York.
Greetings, Gus. Greetings, Mr. Demery, or the callers. That was a great pickup on Brentwood. Very good pickup. Gus, on last Saturday show, I said August is always a month to remember. And man, I can't wait until Saturday. The most racist thing ever. I mean, I wouldn't be shooting no hoops. I don't know. And also, from the reading, they was talking about heavy metal. I learned about porn grind, man. Oh, man, Gus, I got some lyrics. Man, I can't wait until Saturday show there. Porn grind, white people, boy. White people. Either way. I only had questions, really, from the reading. And one is, are we stalking white people? Are we unable to accept rejection? Are white people not being definitive about their rejection? Maybe they just need to just flat out, I don't know how they could say it, but it seems like we just, regardless of what they do, we just seem to be in that position where we just keep coming back and coming up with some other clever idea to keep us around. I just don't know, Gus. And that was my question. I'll mute my line. Thank you.
Much obliged, Thomas in New York. Are black people stalking white people? My response to the question would be we're in a system of racism, white supremacy, where individuals classified as white, they dominate the entire known universe and all areas of people activity. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's that black people are quote unquote stalking white people, racist man, racist woman, being in a position of power, more power than us. They have made themselves the folks to see directly, indirectly, if you want to get anything done. That's what racism, white supremacy means. In some instances, it may mean if you don't go and talk to a certain white woman or white man, you don't eat. That's what it might mean, or something else that is fatal. So, I wouldn't exactly say that that's stalking. I mean, unless you say that someone has told you clearly you don't have a right to live on this planet. We don't think of you as a human being, and you try to chase them down to get them to convince their mind. I don't exactly call that stalking. I would say that's doing the logical thing that you can do from a weak position to try to stay alive or get whatever feeble, resources that would be of benefit to you. That would be my response, attempting to follow logic. Other folks who dialed in, if you have questions, comments from the book, what you've heard thus far, line should be open, *61. Proceed.
Can I be heard?
Greetings, retired firefighter.
Greetings, Gus. Greetings, everyone that's on the line. Well, I would describe it more or less as white people have been hunting non-white people for centuries. And non-white people, in order to obtain even the necessities, basically have to go through different means in order to acquire that from their oppressors, which are primarily white people. I, on one part, can see that the beginning of the reading of today would be something that this is actually, according to what I heard in the first reading, is primarily warning signs and whatnot on behalf of females, because he explicitly has been stating about, for the most part, male infractions on females, which I would say is true, but females are becoming exposed more and more to the same signs, the different enticements in order to do the same things, and weaponry. I myself have coached at least two or three high school teenagers who have either been murdered, and one right now is at the University of Tennessee, and he was stabbed during lunch break at his high school before he transferred to the high school where I coach at. The only thing that saved his life was the physician that was in the trauma room at the time was able to stop his bleeding. And right now he's, full scholarship at the University of Tennessee. But it could be something useful in that light on some of the signs that he was talking about as far as stalkers. But I'm also emphasizing that stalkers are not solely male, and it's a rising number of females who are behaving in similar ways. from that standpoint. So that part can be utilized across the board with people, male and female, as far as the behaviors are concerned, to what to look out for, I would say. You had a question?
I think Thomas in New York asked a question about if black people are stalking white people. I think my question in general was just reading this book, given what has transpired with the shootings in Texas and Ohio, that's one of the major themes that Gavin de Becker talks about in general, and that he addresses in this book. Precursors, things to be alert to, so that you can recognize when these type of situations happen. So just if folks had any thoughts on the significance reading this book, what's transpired, if they've seen any parallels or anything has sounded familiar.
Well, I would say that there is, as far as from my readings and studies, there's never been one of these national or global cases, whereas that person, that perpetrator, which primarily was a white person, white male to be exact, did not have warning signs of their behavior long before what they were famous for. I can go back to my studies from 1966 with the white male who was formerly a Marine and went up in the University of Texas into that tower and just shot up all those people. I mean, he started off by killing his I believe his mom or his dad or both. I don't know for sure, but he did kill some family members and then went to this tower. And I mean, but it was signs about his behavior long before he actually did it. And it's something that keeps going on and on and on. As far as although I'm also in agreement, because I was going over some of the archives with Dr. Welsing, that stated that she stated on the program years ago that you can't directly state that when white people do these things that it's a mental problem. You know, it's a mental problem. It's some other factors involved. That's something I would say, along with the terminology of identifying yourself as a white person, that comes along with it. The behavior that comes along with it. It had to be some sort of very drastic means for a group of people to be in charge of so many people in such a terroristic, devastating way. And it just can't be passed off by saying, well, they're just crazy, that's it. for all they're concerned. But those are some of my thoughts as the first reading was going on. And I'll let somebody else talk. Thank you.
Much obliged, retired firefighter. Make sure I get in some of the folks who wrote in commentary as well. One listener, he wrote in, from listening to those who called in, especially Emmy and Mr. Demery 4, if victims of white supremacy do not interpret the readings of this book through the lens of a victim listening to a suspected racist, we soon forget that their fear is not our fear. That's the key to not drifting into an ideology that black people that we know have been the biggest impact of fear in our existence. This creates an ideal of individualism, the concept that we have an individual experience that separated us from the context of the group dynamic of white supremacy racism. I agree that Mr. Fuller's area of sex in the code is the universal guide to the interpretation of our relations with the complementary sex. I also think that the retired firefighter has a good opinion on this. Comments from one person who wrote in. We talked about that last week, some of the racial elements of the book that are kind of coded. OJ Simpson mentions, and Al Sharpton. Let's see, some of the notes that I took this week. I'll keep an eye on the switchboard as well. Star 61 if you have commentary. The first, let's see, highlight. The movie even where he mentions Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate, really popular film, still popular to this day. I'm not sure that they could do that film with a black male where he gets away with all of that incorrect behavior. And white people have a lot of movies. Like they talk bad about Bill Cosby. Like they have a lot of movies where white males are shown being able to get away and perform all sorts of inappropriate conduct in the name of dating or pursuing generally a white woman. This is a long legacy in the system of racism, white supremacy, where you're just not going to find where black males are allowed to do this sort of thing. In fact, you can think of what's the film that they, well, one of the films that they brag about, excuse me, on a regular basis is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? Cowbell. Sidney Poitier is not stalking this white woman after she's rejected him and, oh, call me back. Oh, let me get your number, and going and sitting outside her house and all that craziness. He's like a physician. She's like a no count. I don't even think she has a job, much less a degree or anything. The white woman that he's with, like he's super overguarded. She is under his league, but she's white. So you're not going to see black males in these types of roles allowed to do these types of things. And this, in my view, this would be another point. If you're going to criticize these images that come from Hollywood, it should be, hey, this is white dominated entertainment. This is not Bill Cosby, who is responsible for The Graduate or any of these other movies that he mentions. This is whites who are responsible for these images, and largely, almost exclusively white men that are allowed to function like this in the way that he's criticizing, to do all of these incorrect and abusive things to females in these films. Next, we says this white supremacist Hollywood formula could be called boy wants girl, girl doesn't want boy, boy harasses girl, boy gets girl. That generally is not going to be a scenario for black people. While I'm sharing some of my notes, you all can think, if you can ponder films where a black male actor, he's in that type of scenario. You can think while I'm sharing the rest of my notes here. Let's see. Next, he says, if a man in the movies wants a sexual encounter or applies persistence, he's a regular everyday guy. But if a woman does the same thing, she's a maniac or a killer. Again, in my view, it would be if it is a white man in the movies does this, it's persistence, he's a regular everyday white guy. But if a non-white, especially a black male, and then we have to even apply the rest, and I even have to think, is this true? If a woman does the same thing, she's a maniac or a killer. Just recall Fatal Attraction, King of Comedy, Single White Female, Play Misty for Me, Hand That Rocks the Cradle, and Basic Instinct. When the men pursue, they usually get the girl. When the women pursue, they usually get killed. I will have to think on that. I guess that's another one people can think on. Movies is one of our favorite topics. I think white women are given more leeway. I think I've seen films where white women are allowed to be aggressive. I thought Sex and the City was all about that, right? Didn't HBO, wasn't that their hit? Well, you had a lot of forward, aggressive, sexually out there, liberated, as they say, white women in that show, and none of them got killed. That show stayed on for years and years and years. They made it into a big motion picture after they took the series off the air. But folks can think about that if they want to. Another point where, in my opinion, you're practicing deliberate racism, white supremacy, because you know Denzel Washington, Sidney Poitier, Bill Cosby, they are not going to be allowed to function in that manner in a film. In fact, Denzel Washington, he played opposite of Julia Roberts in Pelican Brief, which was written by John Grisham. He's a famous white lawyer, admitted racist, John Grisham. But in that movie, they talked about it's in You Mean There's Race in My Movie. It's talked about specifically where they went through great pain to make sure that they had a bedroom scene with Denzel Washington and Julia Roberts to make sure that it was clear Denzel Washington and Julia Roberts are not in the same bed. In fact, they're not even in the same bedroom. No hanky-panky here. Denzel Washington is not going to be aggressive and pushing up on her and what's your number and hanging out. None of that here. Platonic, as they say. Continuing, let's see. Next one I had, when a woman rejects someone who has a crush on her and she says, it's just that I don't want to be in a relationship right now, he hears only the words right now. To him, this means she will want to be in a relationship later. The rejection should be, I don't want to be in a relationship with you. Unless it's just that clear, and sometimes even when it is, he doesn't hear it. I thought that was important, number one, just because on this program and a part of counter-racism in general, paying attention to words, very important. I thought that was an important improvement with you. Not something related to time, so you can come back and try again tomorrow or next week or next month. No, this is permanent, and this is about you. Let's see. He had some great terms. Loan sharking. He had that list, I think, at the one of the first few chapters that we read in terms of ways that a potential perpetrator might try to swindle you, might try to get you to lower your suspicion so that they can victimize and abuse you. One of them was, we're part of a team. All of a sudden, if something happens and, oh man, I can't believe this happened to us. So like we're working through this together, even though we're strangers. The other one where they come and they offer this unsolicited help. You mentioned the one before about the guy, he comes and offers to get the groceries. And this time, loan sharking, the guy comes, I think she had mentioned that she didn't have space for her books and he came and built the whole bookshelf. Be really mindful about that. People offering assistance when you have not requested it. Be mindful about that, especially if it's with a stranger and or someone who you're just not certain about. Be cautious about that. People generally say ask for help when it is needed, but if you have not requested help and it's being vigorously offered, take a pause if you have any concern. Let's see. I thought this was a great suggestion. The woman can steer the conversation to the man's last breakup and evaluate how he describes it. Does he accept responsibility for his part? Is he still invested? Was he slow to let go? Slow to hear what the woman communicated? Has he let go yet? Great questions that can be asked. And again, I think he tries to emphasize in the book often that past behavior often can be one of the best indicators of current and or future behavior, types of things that people have done before. Good question. Matter of fact, that section that I just read, asking about a previous breakup and how do you handle it, that can be included in your 200 questions. Those who follow Mr. Fuller's guide for quote unquote dating male, female, put that in there. Tell me about, your last breakup. Let's see. Asking questions. He just does a lot of that in different situations. Asking questions, whether it's workplace, so-called dating, asking questions can get you a lot of information. Next, the racism, white supremacy. So he says, so he's talked about when I might be a white male who shot his jaw off. I could be in error about this, but he says James was not the only young man who spent more time consuming media products than he spent on any other activity in his waking life. He was an avid patron on the violence division of the entertainment industry. In Selling Out America's Children, author David Walsh likens it to a guest in our families that advocates violence, but we don't throw him out. He notes that since children learn by modeling and imitation, the 200,000 acts of violence they will witness in the media by age 18 pose a serious problem. Dr. Park Dietz has said that the symbolic violence in an hour-long episode of a violent television show does more harm when summed up over the millions of participants than a single murder of the usual variety. Now, the thing that made me highlight this is, and I'm just going back to one of the basic points that I made as we've been reading this book for the duration. We're in a system of racism, white supremacy that demands violence against black people. White people, white children have been committing and spectating for terrorism, violence against black people for centuries. Now, we didn't have Netflix and Hulu and all the rest of it back in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. You could just go out and watch a nigger. Didn't we read Delectable Negro? Watch them scald a nigger. Watch them lash 100 lashes. Isn't that what Edward Baptist said in The Half Has Never Been Told? We go in and make up new torture devices and sit out on the porch, mint julep, and watch them in the torture contraption for hours. Nothing like that on Netflix to this day. Lynchings. We can switch it up, fast forward. We can move forward to 1900. Okay, now we have a picnic. We put it in the paper. We're going to lynch Ted. He raped one of our white women. We're always fearful about that. Raped one of our white women, so we're going to lynch nigger Ted. Be tomorrow at noon. Bring your picnic and bring your white children. Don't they have all those photos without sanctuary? The book and the exhibit of little white children. They get to go out. Sometimes they say it would take a long time. Sometimes the hanging could be a whole day affair. Again, nothing like that on Netflix now. 24 hours of a live nigger hanging. They have been watching, consuming, Delectable Negro, consuming violence against black people for the duration of white supremacy, racism, television. Matter of fact, we can even bump the television aside. We had the book on the program about the history of the circus, the showman and the slave, talking about that right there. That and minstrel shows, the whole birth of all of entertainment, not just Hollywood, but entertainment, period, in this part of the world. And that too was about racism, white supremacy. So I thought that was extraordinarily disingenuous just to try to pawn this off on TV. Yeah, all those violent images on television, people sitting around in all those violent video games. We're in a system of white supremacy racism. A lot of those violent video games and TV programs are, well, as I said, they fall short of all the lynching and what happened before, and they are mimicking what whites have been doing anyway. I will pause. Oh, wait a minute. I did have another one. Yeah, I did have more, but I'll pause there. If other folks dialed in, if you have other comments, questions you want to make sure you share before we get to the second audio segment. Thomas in New York.
That's a great point. And in fact, I would say since the invention of violent television and video games, this is the best behavior whites have ever been on in this country's history. The last 20, 30 years since this stuff, I guess they've been able to get off some of their stuff on the video games and watching the movies. Because, like you said, way before any of that stuff, lynchings, hunting, all types of stuff they was doing to black people, gang rapings, just out in the open, blatant, So, I don't blame. They're trying to do that for that white supremacist who killed those people up in Ohio. I don't want to hear it. It wasn't no video gaming. It was he was like that from birth. The guy's making great points. And in fact, I asked the question because I tend to think that white people are stalking us. They keep every time we pull away, they find a way to pull us back. Every time we say, "Oh, that's enough," it seems like they come up with some what did he call it? You just said it. Not showcasing, loan sharking. We'll do this for you. It's like I think that they're stalking us. That's why I asked the question. And I'll meet my line. Thank you.
Much obliged, Thomas in New York. Any other folks? Questions, comments, observations they want to make sure they get in before we get to the second audio segment?
Yes, I wanted to make one comment on the young man that was on the suicide pact with his friend, and he watched his friend kill himself, and he didn't succeed, but he blew off the bottom part of his face with his chin and his tongue, and he described, how hideous he looked. I'm wondering, after that, he quoted him as saying quite a bit. He even testified, I guess, on Capitol Hill. How did he do all this talking without a tongue and without a lower jaw? That was one question that I had. And also, it seemed that he spent a lot of time, agonizing over reading this guy's report and everything, because to him, white life is very valuable, and, he just couldn't bear to, bring his attention to that. But I'll mute my line to that, Gus. Thanks.
Much obliged, Mr. Demery. I had not heard of this case. Now, this, I guess, the book was published in 1997, so, over 20 years ago. I certainly do not claim to be the best at having checked every 90s incident that would have been prominent at the time that this book was written. So I had not heard of this case, or I don't remember this case. This seems like something that would have got a lot of attention. So there might be videos or photographs, I would think, at least. I would think there should be videos, though, if they had all this gruesome imagery and what have you. This could have been Wisdom of Psychopaths, where, you might be able to see what this guy looks like. And then in terms of, being able to figure out how he was able to talk without a tongue and all that, like I said, there might be video. I think he said that his mother was there to kind of help him interpretate. So I guess if he had the ability to make some sounds, or I don't know if he drew or she. I'm ignorant about the case. I'll have to research, but it seems like if it's this prominent and they went to court and were trying to sue this group and everything, that there should be, ample clippings, research, things that, we can look at and try and see. That's a good question, though, Mr. Demery. Any other questions, comments, things that stood out? Folks want to make sure they share. I thought that was kind of a slick mention, him including Tina Turner. Not that someone classified as white cannot say, oh, I just enjoy Tina Turner. All right, yeah. But for the time that this book was published, 1997, with all the attention on OJ Simpson, I'm pretty sure the recognition would have been, oh, yeah, Ike Turner. Another no-count black male who did nothing but beat down another black male who is the poster child for abuse. O.J. Simpson, Ike Turner, just keep throwing them. And at least in my view, that is important because you don't have many mentions of black people. Like I said, those films, I think I mentioned that last week when he went through his list of films this week. I don't think I heard any films that featured black actors. All of the main people in those films were white. All of the males that he talked about were white. All of the females that he talked about in those films were white. Most of the people, period, that he has mentioned in this book are white. So the few times when they do come up, and it's consistently, for the most part, a negative reference, O.J. Simpson, Al Sharpton, even this one with Tina Turner. Like I said, I could see how some people say, hey, that's Tina Turner. What are you talking about? I think at the time that this came out, the movie had been out. What's Love Got to Do with It? I think you would have a lot of people. The immediate recognition would be Ike Turner. That's another victim of no good black male savagery. I could be totally in error. If anybody, thinks that I'm trying to just add in too much, feel free to speak up if I'm not being logical. Did anybody come up with any movie roles where black males are able to carry out what he said, where black males can go out and stalk, harass, and do all of these sexist, incorrect...
One movie.
One, let's hear it.
I'm almost embarrassed to mean. But white chicks. The the white women he was stalking was black dudes, but he's the only one, guys. I'm sorry, man.
Woo!
There was a movie involving as the stalker a black female. Thin line between love and hate.
Oh yeah.
Where I believe his name is Martin Lawrence. He was the victim. And what's the great singer that passed? She played his mother, and she was warning him about the lady. I can't think of the only person. Della Reese was the mom, and the actress, very stoic, black female, and I just can't think of her name. But yeah, she was the stalker. But I think that was one of those copycat movies because it was kind of like right behind the movie that was famous for a female stalker, and that was a white woman. I wouldn't even know her name. But in the movie Thin Line Between Love and Hate, I think came not too far after that particular much more well-known popular movie. And I think it was done on purpose in that way. In other words, we need to have a movie that would attract the black audience. That makes it more identified because movies are made like that also. Because it's a money making business, and also people would like to be attracted to movies by having something that where the actors and actresses look like them in the movie, but it could be doing something incorrect and they don't mind. That sort of thing. And that's what Love and Hate was to me. But that's it. That's the only one I can think of.
Much obliged, retired firefighter. So we got white chicks, and I guess I'd even put an asterisk next for that one, because that is not quite the typical white male role, where they just get to wear a pair of pants, shorts at least, and then they can, pursue and stalk and all that, and then they get the girl at the end. White chicks, the black guys, got to wear a dress and do this. All right, but we'll put that one on the list. The
stalker, the stalker was Terry Crews. He was the big
oh my gosh, oh Lord,
he played for the Knicks, and he put all the white chicks in on wheelchairs. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, guys. But I was thinking there's several movies where a white male is stalking a black female. One that comes to mind is the one with Whitney Houston and Kevin Costner, Bodyguard. And there was another one that didn't come out. I think Halle Berry was being stalked by a white woman, white male in a movie. But there's been several movies where that's been the theme. And allowed to aggressively stalk them, without the police really doing anything to the point where they have to defend themselves.
Right on. That, I guess, will make the point. No one has thought Denzel Washington, Michael B. Jordan, Idris Elba, all of these chocolate, beautiful black males. Isn't that what they say? Wesley Snipes before he had his problems, Will Smith. You're telling me none of these big budget Hollywood black actors, Kevin Hart even, throw him in there, none of them, Danny Glover, none of these guys, Samuel L. Jackson, none of them get to do that in the film, get to be inappropriate the whole time, harass, stalk, and they're still the good guy. They're not the villain who ends up in the electric chair or something like Training Day. They get to be the good guy, and they get the girl at the end. None of them? We can't think of one? The Terry Crews, that would be a double asterisk since he had to come out and say he was a victim of sexual harassment. That's way afar from what, we normally get with the Leonardo DiCaprios, and Matt Damons, Brad Pitts of the world of white supremacy. But if you think of one, archives, Let us know. Lots of entertainment fans out there. If you think of a movie, black guy gets to do all this and get the girl not be a villain, drop us an email or dial in. Whew, almost got choked. We will move to audio segment number 2. We are still in chapter 12. The portion where we're picking up at, if you have the book, the first sentence is, some parents are unable to blame anyone for the violence their children commit because they are themselves the victims. That's where we'll pick up at. Context of White Supremacy. This is Gavin de Becker's The Gift of Fear, Survival Signals That Protect Us from Violence. Audio segment number 2.
Some parents are unable to blame anyone for the violence their children commit because they are themselves the victims. Children kill their parents far less frequently than parents kill their children, but the cases so fascinate the public that it might seem they happen frequently. In fact, any kind of murder by a young person is relatively rare. Though Americans under 18 make up almost 25% of the population, they commit less than 10% of the murders. Even so, people are afraid of teenagers, and at times with good reason. So you'll know which times those are, I want to inform your intuition accurately. Most people killed by teenagers are known to them, but about 1 in 5 is a stranger killed during a robbery, either because the teenager panicked or because of peer pressure. Murder is most likely to occur when 2 or more juveniles jointly commit a crime, so fear in that context is appropriate. A recent study shows that an astonishing 75% of homicides by young people occur when they are high or drunk, so encountering criminal teenagers under the influence is most dangerous. Though teenagers are generally not as dangerous to you as adults are, some juvenile offenders, like Willie Bosket, acquire remarkable criminal credentials early in life. By the time he was 15, he had stabbed 25 people and been in and out of detention facilities for an estimated 2,000 other crimes. When authorities finally released him, a jailer made the prediction that one day Willie Bosket is going to kill somebody. That prediction was doubly accurate. Willie killed 2 people, saying he did it for the experience. Being a minor, he was incarcerated for only 5 years, but is now back in prison for other crimes. Even there, his violence continues. He has reportedly set fire to his cell 7 times and attacked guards 9 times. I'm a monster the system created, he says. The statute that allows the state of New York to try juveniles as adults is now called the Willie Bosket Law. Stephen Field is another young person who was relentless in his efforts to hurt others. At age 8, he dropped bricks onto traffic from a freeway overpass. At 9, he assaulted another boy with an axe. School officials designated a separate bus stop for him because he regularly threatened to kill other children. By 14, he was abusing drugs and reportedly drank entire bottles of hard liquor in single sittings. At 17, he committed his first known murder, that of a young girl. A court ruled that his parents could be sued for negligence because even knowing about his past behavior, they gave him the knife he used to kill the girl. While awaiting trial, he killed his older brother. In the brilliant book Emotional Intelligence, Daniel Goleman describes 7 key abilities most beneficial for human beings. The ability to motivate ourselves, to persist against frustration, to delay gratification, to regulate moods, to hope, to empathize, and to control impulse. Many of those who commit violence never learned these skills. If you know a young person who lacks them all, that's an important pre-incident indicator, and he needs help. Another predictor of violence is chronic anger in childhood. If you know a child who is frequently or extremely angry, he too needs help. There are usually plenty of warning signs for teen violence, as with 18-year-old Jason Massey, who killed his 13-year-old stepsister and a 14-year-old boy. He was missing all the abilities Goleman cites, but it was the lack of an ability to control impulses that probably explains the gruesome things Massey did. like cutting off the girl's hands and head. The warning signs were obvious. He idolized serial killers Ted Bundy and Henry Lee Lucas, studied everything he could find on Charles Manson, and avidly followed his favorite music group, Slayer. In the years before he killed people, Massey slaughtered cows, cats, and dogs. He kept the skulls. He often spoke of wanting to kill girls. He robbed a fast food restaurant. He stalked and terrorized a teenage girl for 5 years, sending her letters about slitting her throat and drinking her blood. People knew all these details, and yet denial prevailed. Unlike James Vance, Massey was forthcoming about his goals. "All I want is the murdering of countless young women. I wish to reap sorrow for the families." This kind of anger at family does not come out of nowhere. Many young murderers kill within the family, often shooting abusive fathers or stepfathers, which is no surprise. You will, however, be surprised at how young they can be. A boy I'll call Robbie shot and killed his father after watching his mother being beaten. The drunk father had left a gun on the table, and though Robbie confessed to the killing, few people initially believed that he could have done it. That's because he was only 3 years old. After gunpowder tests confirmed him as the killer, he explained to authorities, "I killed him. Now he's dead. If he would have hit my mother again, I would have shot him again." In his compelling and disturbing book, When a Child Kills, lawyer Paul Mones unflinchingly explores parricide. He observes that unlike with most murders, events that occur 12 years before a parricide are as important as those that occur 12 hours before it. The single most reliable pre-incident indicator of parricide is child abuse. It is recognized that most runaway children in America leave their families to escape abuse or to call attention to it. But some of those who stay at home, Mones explains, lay family secrets bare with the report of a gun. Children who kill their parents are usually found to have been beaten, degraded, sodomized, tied up, or tortured in other ways. Mones tells of one 16-year-old, Mike, whom prosecutors described as just one of those violent, rebellious, degenerate teenagers who are cold-hearted killers. But there was much more to the story than that. Mike had been beaten by his father from kindergarten on. Though he was an athletic and coordinated boy, he had constant injuries from falling off his bike, tripping, or cutting himself. During the trial, he was asked to strip to a bathing suit so the jury could see the scars his father had given him over the years. The abuse ended abruptly one night. Mike had returned home late, and his father was waiting for him with a pistol. "You got 2 choices," he explained to the boy. "You kill me, or I kill you." The ultimatum had been offered before, but this time Mike's father actually held the gun out to him, and this time Mike took it and shot his father in the head. Another young boy who killed a parent told Mones that living in prison was better than living with the abuse at home. He described himself as locked up but free. Some people believe that children who kill shouldn't have been so docile during their abuse. They should have at least reported the abuse long before it reached the point that murder seemed their only way out. Proponents of these ideas may have forgotten that adult victims of rape or hijacking are often just as docile as children, and we don't later blame them for failing to do something. The warning signs of parricide and other awful violence are shown to parents, teachers, policemen, neighbors, and relatives. It is they, often we, not children, who must report these cases. Of all the violence discussed in this book, being killed by one's own daughter or son is the easiest to avoid. A precaution that is virtually guaranteed starts years before the child is big enough to hurt anyone. Be a loving parent. Unlike teens, preteens who kill within the family are more likely to kill a sibling than a parent. As with other violence, it doesn't happen without warning. Most of these cases have involved an abused or severely disturbed child whose prior attempts to kill a sibling were not taken seriously. That's because many people believe that violence by children against children is a natural part of growing up. It may be, but when a child does something that places another child in serious hazard, it should not be ignored. I recently testified in a case where it was, and after reading what follows, few parents should ever feel blind confidence when sending their children off to school. The offender was a grammar school student I'll call Joey. He sodomized a 7-year-old boy in the school bathroom. Though he acted alone, he was aided by some astonishing negligence on the part of the school system and the principal in particular. Though the school district claimed Joey's rape couldn't have been predicted, there had been a striking pre-incident indicator a month earlier. Joey had actually been arrested for victimizing another boy the same way in the same bathroom. Because this was not my only case involving disturbing negligence by schools, and because school policies and personnel are not what you think they are, I want to take a moment and give some background. First of all, though they claim otherwise, schools are in the business of high-stakes predictions. School teachers and administrators regularly face these predictive questions. Will this visitor seek to kidnap a child? Will this teacher molest a child? Is this child being abused at home? Will this child bring a lethal weapon to school? Though most people cannot imagine that young boys can rape anyone, the school district in Joey's case knew better. For years, they'd had a specific written policy entitled child-on-child sexual abuse. Since the existence of that policy makes clear that such things happen, it, in effect, raises a predictive question for every principal. Imagine that all the students are gathered in the auditorium and the principal surveys the group with this question in mind. Who among these students might sexually abuse another child? Through his behavior, Joey stands up in this imaginary assembly and calls out, "It might be me," but the principal chooses to ignore the boy. The administrators at Joey's previous school had made the whole matter simpler for the principal. They actually predicted, in writing, that Joey would act out in sexually inappropriate ways, and they sent his records to the school where the rapes ultimately occurred. It's hard to imagine that anyone could have ignored the warning signs he wore like a banner. Carrying a knife, threatening homicide, threatening and attempting suicide, lighting a building on fire, pouring gasoline on his mother and trying to light a match, displaying fascination with sex and sexual organs, inappropriate sexual conduct toward children, exposing himself, aggression, violence. As if all these warning signs were not enough, the principal took no effective action when he learned of Joey's sexual assault of another student. Is this kind of negligence really possible? This and more. After the first rape accusation, the principal chose not to take the obvious step that might have increased supervision of Joey at the school. He did not tell the boys' teachers anything about what had happened. It gets worse. When one teacher found Joey to be unmanageable, he was sent to another class of younger, smaller boys. By this action, the school provided him with a virtual beauty contest of victims, and he chose one. The presence of security guards at a school may add comfort for some parents, but understand that at this school, part of one of the nation's largest school districts, security guards received absolutely no training on any aspect of student safety. They received no written guidelines, no post instructions, no policies on the topic whatsoever. Even if they'd known what their jobs were supposed to be, they weren't informed about the rape accusation, not even told anything as simple and easy as, "Be extra alert," or "Keep an eye out." When organizations of any kind are pressured to improve security, a typical response is to hire guards. Everyone sighs and feels the matter has been addressed. But if guards are not trained or supervised or properly equipped, if there is no intelligent plan for them to follow, their presence can hurt more than help. That's because having taken this expensive step, everyone stops looking at safety and security. I've noted the precautions the principal failed to take, but there is one precaution he did take. After the first rape accusation, he arranged to have the dangerous boy escorted whenever he went to that bathroom. This may sound like a reasonable precaution, until I tell you that the principal had Joey escorted not by a teacher or security guard, but by another student. I don't imagine that any parent would have volunteered his or her son for the job of escorting a violent criminal, particularly one that even experienced teachers could not handle. If an adult employee at the school, say the janitor, for example, had Joey's background and was arrested for raping a student, would the principal have let him come back to work? I can't answer even this obvious question with any certainty. I know only that Joey leaped on the stage of that imaginary assembly and yelled, "It is me. I am the child-on-child sexual offender." And the principal turned away. Joey was finally taken out of school and placed in a treatment facility, where he sexually attacked 2 people in one day. The investment of abuse and neglect in Joey's own childhood will continue to pay dividends of pain and violence for others, including those he will likely kill one day. As I write this sad but accurate prediction, Joey is only 9 years old. As I did after describing other cases in which blindingly obvious warning signs went unheeded, I want to acknowledge that the principal at Joey's school was probably doing the best he could with the skills and knowledge he had at the time. This is not some legal disclaimer. It's what I believe, but I also believe that cases like these involve organizational and individual laziness, as well as the hope that something will just go away if it's ignored. Advising on another case in which a young child was sexually assaulted at school, this time by a non-student, I reviewed the school district's entire policy book. It will not be reassuring to parents to learn that the topic of safety wasn't even raised until page 10. And that reference was about faculty safety when breaking up fights. The policy contained 3 full pages and 21 separate items about the protection of keys, but didn't even mention the topic of danger to students until page 91. Children require the protection of adults, usually from adults. Their fear of people is not yet developed, their intuition not yet loaded with enough information and experience to keep them from harm. The lesson for parents in the cases I've cited is to take nothing for granted when it comes to the safety of your children. I suggest that you request a copy of the school's safety policies and then settle in for a very discouraging read. Go to the school and ask them every obvious question you can think of and see if the answers make you feel better or worse. Just the fact that you ask puts safety on the agenda and forces the school to focus on it. Ask about the school's background screening process for employees. If they have security personnel, ask to meet them and see how they respond to probing questions. Ask about previous crimes at the school. This last question is particularly important. Federal law requires that colleges maintain campus crime statistics and make them available upon request. This is so college students and their parents selecting a school can evaluate security and safety. There's no law requiring grammar schools or high schools to keep such statistics, but I wish there were. Rather than relying on government, you can make at least as vigorous an inquiry of your child's school as you should of your child's babysitter, because if you assume that the school is addressing the matter of your child's safety as seriously as you would, you may be very disappointed. Though Joey was only 9, he already had the widely established risk factors for future criminality. They are poverty, child abuse in the form of violence, witnessing violence, humiliation, or neglect, drug addiction in a parent, drug or alcohol abuse by the child, and a single-parent childhood. Joey had another hugely significant risk factor, one that is often overlooked, the absence of a father in his life. David Blankenhorn, author of Fatherless America, notes that 80% of the young men in juvenile detention facilities were raised without fully participating fathers. Fathers are so important because they teach boys various ways to be men. Sadly, too many boys learn from the media or from each other what scholars call protest masculinity, characterized by toughness and the use of force. That's not the only way to be a man, of course, but it's the only way they know. Some people seriously ponder the question of whether males are even necessary for raising children, and we do little to encourage the role of fathers. In fact, Blankenhorn points out, prison is our #1 social program for young men. Recently I met with a group of men graduating from that social program. As a court-ordered part of their recovery from heroin addiction, I was asked to discuss with them the experience of growing up with violence and drugs. Joined by some graduates of a women's prison, we sat in what looked like a schoolroom. In a sense it was, for here each person learned the benefits and blessings of 12-step programs, the founding of which M. Scott Peck, author of The Road Less Traveled, calls the greatest positive event of the 20th century. Ideally, such programs would teach these prisoners to accept their pasts, for only then could they learn responsibility for their present. One after another they gave their 3-minute life stories, each told of violence, fear, abandonment, and neglect. All of the men had been physically abused as children, and all but one of the 10 women had been sexually abused by family members. A few told of the regret and horror they felt at having grown up to be violent to their own children. I wept as I heard about the progress they had made, for though this locked halfway house was a long way from the mainstream of our society, it was also a long way from the hell these people had all occupied, and caused others to occupy. I wept because the stories were moving, they were personal, they were mine, and also because my mother had not found the routes out of addiction that these people were finding. When it was time for me to give a 45-minute talk, I related some of my experiences as a child and a teenager. The similarity of our stories was immediately apparent to everyone there. When I finished, several people had questions. The first hand to go up was that of a man about my age, but I'd have thought we had little else in common. He was tattooed, scarred, overly muscular, and weathered. He was the kind of man most people would fear on a dark street, and during much of his life, they'd have been right to fear him. His most recent long stay in prison had been for arson. He'd broken into an apartment to steal anything he could sell. I didn't need money just for drugs. I also had to pay my lawyer because I had a court appearance coming up on another burglary charge. To cover up any evidence of the burglary, he had set a fire that destroyed several apartments and sent one person to the hospital, badly burned. He looked me up and down and asked, "Why are you sitting over there and I'm over here?" I didn't understand the question, and he explained, "You and me had the same childhood, but you're in that nice suit and probably drive a nice car. You get to leave today. You're sitting over there. How'd that happen?" This question had often presented itself in my work and my life, first as a curiosity, later as more than that. I could have been a likely and welcome resident of the world of violence, as opposed to the tourist I became, but somehow I followed a different route. Some people come through awful childhoods and become productive, contributing adults, while others do antisocial or even monstrous things. Why? It's similar to one brother asking another, "Why did you grow up to be a drunk?" The answer is, "Because Dad was a drunk." The second brother then asks, "Why didn't you grow up to be a drunk?" The answer is, "Because Dad was a drunk." Some more complete answers are found in Whoever Fights Monsters, Robert Ressler's classic book. He speaks to the tremendous importance of the early puberty period for boys. Before then, the anger of these boys might have been submerged and without focus, perhaps turned inward in the form of depression, perhaps, as in most cases, just denied to emerge later. But during puberty, this anger collides with another powerful force, one of the most powerful in nature, sexuality. Even at this point, says Ressler and others, these potential hosts of monsters can be turned around through the often unintentional intervention of people who show kindness, support, or even just interest. I can say from experience that it doesn't take much. Ressler's theories on the childhoods of the worst killers in America have an unlikely ideological supporter, psychiatrist and child advocate Alice Miller. Her emotionally evocative books, including The Drama of the Gifted Child and The Untouched Key, make clear that if a child has some effective human contact at particularly significant periods, some recognition of his worth and value, some witness to his experience, this can make an extraordinary difference. I've learned that the kindness of a teacher, a coach, a police officer, a neighbor, the parent of a friend, is never wasted. These moments are likely to pass with neither the child nor the adult fully knowing the significance of the contribution. No ceremony attaches to the moment that a child sees his own worth reflected in the eyes of an encouraging adult. Though nothing apparent marks the occasion, inside that child a new view of self might take hold. He's not just a person deserving of neglect or violence, not just a person who is a burden to the sad adults in his life, not just a child who fails to solve his family's problems, who fails to rescue them from pain or madness or addiction or poverty or unhappiness. No, this child might be someone else, someone whose appearance before this one adult revealed specialness or lovability or value. This value might be shown through appreciation of a child's artistic talent, physical ability, humor, courage, patience, curiosity, scholarly skills, creativity, resourcefulness, responsibility, energy, or any of the many attributes that children bring us in such abundance. I had a fifth-grade teacher, Mr. Conway, who fought monsters in me. He showed kindness and recognized some talent in me at just the period when violence was consuming my family. He gave me some alternative designs for self-image, not just the one children logically deduce from mistreatment. If this is how I am treated, then this is the treatment I am worthy of. It might literally be a matter of a few hours with a person whose kindness reconnects the child to an earlier experience of self, a self that was loved and valued and encouraged. Sadly, for children who didn't have nurturing even in infancy, there isn't any frame of reference, no file in the mind in which to place kindness and recognition so that they might be seen as part of life. All of this shows the great value of mentoring and of programs like Big Brothers and Big Sisters. When a child's primary caregiver delivers both praise and brutality, it is a virtual coin toss as to which will attach itself to the child's identity. Terribly unhealthy families damage children in many ways, but one of the saddest is the destruction of the child's belief that he has purpose and value. Without that belief, it's difficult to succeed, difficult to take risks. Perhaps more to the point, it may seem foolish to take risks, knowing, as such people do, that they are not up to the task. The way circus elephants are trained demonstrates this dynamic well. When young, they're attached by heavy chains to large stakes driven deep into the ground. They pull and yank and strain and struggle, but the chain is too strong, the stake too rooted. One day, they give up, having learned that they can't pull free. And from that day forward, they can be chained with a slender rope. When this enormous animal feels any resistance, though it has the strength to pull the whole circus tent over, it stops trying. Because it believes it cannot, it cannot. You'll never amount to anything. You can't sing. You're not smart enough. Without money, you're nothing. Who'd want you? You're just a loser. You should have more realistic goals. You're the reason our marriage broke up. Without you kids, I'd have had a chance. You're worthless. This opera is being sung in homes all over America right now. The stakes driven into the ground, the heavy chains attached, the children reaching the point they believe they cannot pull free. And at that point, they cannot. Unless and until something changes their views, unless they grasp the striking fact that they are tied with a thread, that the chain is an illusion, that they were fooled, and ultimately, that whoever so fooled them was wrong about them, and that they were wrong about themselves, unless all this happens, these children are not likely to show society their positive attributes as adults. There's more involved, of course, than just parenting. Some of the factors are so small they cannot be seen, and yet so important they cannot be ignored. They are human genes. The one known as D4DR may influence the thrill-seeking behavior displayed by many violent criminals. Along with the influences of environment and upbringing, an elongated D4DR gene will likely be present in someone who grows up to be an assassin or a bank robber or a daredevil. Behavioral geneticist Irving Gottsman. Under a different scenario and in a different environment, that same person could become a hero in Bosnia. In the future, genetics will play a much greater role in behavioral predictions. We'll probably be able to genetically map personality traits as precisely as physical characteristics like height and weight. Though it'll generate much controversy, parents may someday be able to use prenatal testing to identify children with unwanted personality genes, including those that make violence more likely. Until then, however, we'll have to settle for a simpler, low-tech strategy for reducing violence, treating children lovingly and humanely. Frank Sulloway, author of Born to Rebel, says that life's miseries fall disproportionately on children, and this is certainly true. Throughout history, half of all children have failed to reach adulthood. Considering this, and all that we know about violence against young people, they have much more reason to be afraid of us than we have to be afraid of them. Even so, the mistreatment we invest in children does come back to us, and is already costing us our safety and our peace. A federal research project selected 1,600 children who had been abused or neglected and followed them for nearly 20 years. As of last year, fully half of them have been arrested for some crime. Still, even though it's so expensive for us, mistreatment will probably continue until we take an entirely different view of children, not as temporary visitors who will someday grow into citizens, but as full-fledged, fully contributing, fully entitled members of our society, just as they are right now. Children are often seen as burdens to society, no more than hapless victims of their circumstance, but nothing could be further from the truth. Recognize that children are the primary child care providers in America. Siblings caring for siblings and children caring for themselves represent an important part of our economy. They also care for the elderly, cook meals, take cigarettes out of the hands of sleeping parents, and contribute in countless other ways. If only more abused children could know that they are the residents of their homes, not the architects, then they might believe that where they are will not limit where they might go. Until America focuses shame on perpetrators instead of victims, these children will have children, and the war they thought was over won't be over, for them or for us. We can, of course, continue ignoring these children, but a few of them will grow up and commit the one crime that is impossible to ignore: assassination. While that may feel distant from your life, I raise the topic here for a very practical reason. Just as the members of a troubled family are forced to look inward when their teenage son gets into serious trouble after years of signaling that he would, the assassin makes us look at ourselves as a nation. The assassin makes us look at the media, at attention-seeking crimes, at our huge harvest of handguns, at violence, and at child-rearing. Understanding the assassin, who may seem the most remote of criminals, can help you understand and be safer from the least remote of criminals.
Context of White Supremacy. that will do it for the second audio segment. We should have, I think, a max of 2 sessions left on this book, and then we will be moving on. New book, as I said, maybe Toni Morrison, have to see. We should have maybe 2 weeks to decide, though. Before then, Gavin de Becker, The Gift of Fear, the number to dial if you have questions, comments, 605-313-5164, the code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Quickly, before I get to some of the folks who dialed in, as I stated, many of these cases I was not familiar with before we read this book. This is my first time reading the book. Willie Bosket is another. Wasn't quite familiar with that case, so I went to do some digging. Mr. Bosket is the one child who went out, violated, hurt all these folks. They changed the laws. This is a black child. Very infamous case, it seems. So the article that I'm reading from, this is at the marshallproject.org. This is from December of 2014. It's titled The Willie Bosket Case. I'm not going to read the full report. I'm just giving some of the tidbits that I thought were interesting, and then we'll get to the callers. Someone in the courts must have leaked the name of this one kid, Willie Bosket, whom Edelman says was notorious within the division of youth, having been in and out of the system from the age of 9. We understood Willie to be the exception, not the rule, but the Daily News didn't care about that. They just went on a mission. I mean, they were printing stories almost every day. He's 15 and he likes to kill because it's fun. Read the headline on June 29, the day Kerry was reading the paper. A mad dog killer, New York City Mayor Ed Koch said. For 36 years, I'm skipping down, for 36 years and counting in New York, the treatment of 13, 14, and 15-year-olds charged with certain crimes, some major like murder and some minor like burglary in the second degree, has been dictated by an emergency legislative session called in response to Willie Bosket's crime spree. Among those prosecuted and sentenced to adult time under the law were the Central Park Five, 14 and 15-year-olds wrongly convicted of assaulting and raping a female jogger in 1989. Juveniles tried under the Bosket legacy do not get a hearing in family court where factors such as family history, past trauma, mental illness, and other mitigating circumstances are considered. They don't get access to family court's modest funding stream for education and rehabilitative services. They can't get their crimes expunged. They can be put in prison for life. Juveniles tried under the Bosket legacy do not get a hearing in family court where Liz Ryan, founder of the Campaign for Youth Justice, an advocacy group that fights treatment of juveniles as adults, says the law basically says to this whole cohort of kids, you're all beyond rehabilitation. What's important to note, she says, is that the racial gap in arrest rates is even larger for teens than adults, meaning that the cohort the Willie Bosket law treats as beyond rehabilitation is disproportionately kids of color. As for Willie Bosket, he is locked up for life at Woodbourne Correctional Facility, where he is kept in the most extreme isolation. The New York Times reported in 2008 that after repeatedly attacking guards and other inmates, Bosket was consigned to a specially constructed plexiglass cage and had gone from defiant menace to subdued and empty inmate. At the time, he had gone 14 years without a disciplinary infraction. Willie was the super predator before the term super predator had been invented. The armed, crazed, but calculating black killer. The vanguard of the Hobbesian nightmare, says the youth advocate Keith Hefner, a New Yorker since the 1970s. From what I know, I'm glad that Willie Bosket will never leave prison, but he was an ultra extreme example, basing our social policy on the most extreme outlier. That's what's truly crazy. I'll leave it there. I will note that they do mention in this article that this happening so many years back, decades ago, that this influenced other states. They mentioned Florida specifically and other regions beyond New York that also changed their laws so it would be easier to prosecute children, minors, as adults. But I thought that was a very important mention in this, the second portion of the audio, the Willie Bosket, Bosket, Willie Bosket law. New York, New York. Folks who dialed in, if you have commentary to share, *61. If you did not get to share during the first audio segment and think you have commentary now that you'd like to get in, do not wait till the last moment. Press *61 and we will get you on the line. I think Draftomania, we missed you first time around. If you have commentary to add, proceed.
Hi, Gus, and callers and listeners. I wanted to respond to Gavin de Becker's comment regarding the music, the rock and roll music. I was listening to one of your archive shows, and I had an opportunity to listen to one of the episodes by, I think his name is Gavin de Becker. Yeah, he made the book Mind Control. So I'm now reading that book now, and what I did originally, I listened to the book via. I don't think I listened to your show. I just listened to his audio book, and then I found the book online. It's like a little short book. Do you remember having him on your show in regards to his book called Mind Control?
I remember the guest, not the book.
Okay. Yeah, so the book is like really short. I think it's like 77 pages, and it's basically telling you, discussing, the government's mind control program and those techniques and ways that, how, mind control can be used on people. And in the mind control, they was discussing how they use mind control in music, and how the frequencies, certain frequencies, I'm quite sure you probably know, and the guests probably know that the Nazis used, I think it was 540 hertz, I think it was 540, I'm not sure, something similar to that, hertz, in order to control the masses and be able to get them to do what they wanted them to do. And they were saying that in rock and roll music, that heavy metal music, the frequencies are very low vibrational frequencies, and they have the ability to mind control you. And he was also, with the whole subliminal messages in the music, how they put subliminal messages in the music, and he was discussing the Beatles and how, and that some of their albums, I know one of the records, they kept on saying 999 over, and they were saying "Be Very Fall" or something to that degree. There was that message when you played the record backwards, but also what is his name, George Michael. In one of his records, when you play the record backwards, it says, it's the record, I Know You Miss Me Blind, I Know You Miss Me Blind. When you play the record backwards, and it was really kind of eerie. When you played the record backwards in the audio book, you can hear the message of be in sin. Be in sin, be in sin. So I just wanted to say that the music does definitely have an impact on your psyche, and it can make you do certain things. I'm not necessarily saying that the guy that did committed those crimes, that was the purpose of it, or that was the reason why he did that. But I'm saying as an actual fact that those they are actually manipulating the music and the vibrations in the music and putting out subliminal messages, and may have it does definitely have an impact on people's behavior. That's why they won't allow like a lot of the positive high vibrational music that we once used to put out in the past. They won't allow that because the vibrations is high. They're allowing a lot of the low vibrational things because they're able to manipulate and control the masses. And that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Much obliged, Draptomania. Let's see, the caller, female caller, dialed in that we missed as well. If you have commentary, you should be with us also.
Hello, good evening. Thanks for taking my call. I hope everyone's having the best evening they can have. I guess about the first part, I think you talked about Ike Turner. I've been listening. I haven't heard much about him in the book, and I think it's mainly because he assaulted a black woman. I don't think this person really cares that much about what Ike Turner did because even though it's quote-unquote Tina Turner, he assaulted a black woman. So I don't know why they can't. I mean, of course, I could be in error too, but I just don't think he's that concerned about what happens between black people like that. And also, when they talked about the children, I'm surprised he didn't bring up the behavior that's taught that, when a little boy hits a little girl, that he likes her and things like that, and how little girls, they also get away with hitting little boys. He didn't bring that up. I think that's very important because I've seen that in multiple, races on TV being seen as something. Oh, he just likes you, that's why. Because then people go up and say, well, I don't know he loved me unless he hit me. And then I guess the song, maybe he wasn't paying attention because I even hear that when I heard that song by Britney Spears, Hit Me One More Time. I'm like, why would someone sing that song? That sounds like abuse to me. If you listen to the lyrics, hit me, baby, won't. No, don't hit me. I don't think that's a good thing. And it is informative, but I thought those things that's left out, and I think that's very important because if you're really serious, you're going to stop it at that point before it gets to getting shot in the face and things like that. And I did look up that person. Oh, it's don't look it up. I took the L for you. Don't look it up. It's bad. But I also read, he, like the man said, he died a few years after, but that he had a 1-year-old son. So after he got grown, it's hideous. Somebody said, I want to make a baby with this person. I don't know how this baby came to be, but supposedly in the little thing that you read, the article read about his death and everything, and it says his child would get the estate. So I don't know what estate. So that says to me that either they really believed they were going to win the lawsuit at the time because it hadn't been settled, or these people have some fun. This is a person who had what we would say means, and someone with means, everything, quote unquote, going for them. And these are the options that they took. This seems, I don't know. Now it seems normal. And I know someone said there was a coincidence that we're reading this book around the time of these shootings. I think this book will be timely before, after, around. It's just, this is what's going on. It was going on before the president. I'm not trying to, give him an out or anything, or because I believe he is racist because he said so. When you say I'm at least racist 3 times, I don't know, that sounds like a racist to me. But that's it. Thank you.
Much obliged. Thank you for doing the research and viewing the grisly images so that the rest of us don't have to. Although I don't know if that would satisfy Mr. Demery-Ford's question about how exactly he was able to. Did you see if there were videos where you could see how he was able to accomplish?
Well, I didn't look at the video. I just saw a picture, and his face looked very disfigured, but it looked like they must have done some work because he had, I wasn't really looking for a tongue or anything like that, but he had a bottom part to his face. Maybe it had been blown off, but they got the means, they had the resources, whatever, to give him a bottom. Like I said, he had to say something to someone for him after that, because according to the article, it happened in 1985. He died in 1988. And between that and him dying, someone said, oh, this is the person I want to have a baby with, according to this article, because it said he had a 1-year-old child.
Well, again, thank you for the research. And I guess, yeah, if other folks, if you find out any further, or if you found a video maybe, or other details that indicate, you know,
there
how.
were videos. I figured it was, I saw the picture. I was cool.
Right on. Right on. Other folks who dialed in, if you have comments, questions, Mr. Dermy Ford, retired firefighter, if we, Thomas in New York, if you have a comment or question, proceed.
Wasn't that black male that he was talking about that committed all of these crimes connected with the identification of Crime Boy?
What is that, Crime Boy? What is that?
There was a black male child, I think either in the 80s or the 90s, and it went viral before viral was a popular term, and because he had so many crimes for someone of his early age, and he was nicknamed by the usual suspects as Crime Boy. And I'm thinking that this may be that person that he was talking about, but it may not have been, because it was very popular during that time, enough for him to connect the nickname with the person. He never did. So I was just wondering if that. Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering about that. I would figure that Ben, he's talking about assassins. If the future reading is going to be on assassins
next week, that's the next chapter.
Yeah, it probably would say something about Lee Harvey Oswald, I would guess. It'd be one of them anyway. But yeah, okay. I was just wondering about the whether that person's connected. As far as the disfigured person, I certainly have seen my share of such calamities, but wonders could be done with what they call plastic surgery with people. In some cases, you wouldn't even know that they had the damage until they start taking themselves apart. The human body is, in some cases, rather resilient to severe damage. I can recall you mentioning that you had a cold. Well, children are cold, but children are very resilient. They can have a child can have a 101 fever and still be playing. But with the damage done to that person, I can see where through repair they can make it possible, but that he can make some sort of sounds that would be audible enough for someone to interpret. It may be possible, but no, I wouldn't have any interest to want to see the pictures either, because I've already, like I said, I've had my share of seeing what firearms can do to people who either put the gun to their head or stick it in their mouth, or that sort of thing. It is agreeable that it is not a pleasant sight at all. Yeah, that's it. That was just listening to the second part.
Much obliged, retired firefighter. Let's see. Other folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, if you have comments to share, questions, proceed.
Yes, my dear.
Mr. Demery 4.
Yeah. Okay. The single most reliable pre-incident indicator of parasite is child abuse. And he said that another pre-indicator of violence is chronic anger in childhood. If you know a child who is frequent or extremely angry, he too needs help. Well, I know of one incident. I was dating this female. I had a son. He was extremely angry. There's nothing you could do to, regular stuff like going to a festival or a fair, roller skate, bowling, none of that excited him. He would just opt out of it. And it's kind of like he was just zoned out. And eventually that kid killed someone, and he's on death row right now. So that I know that, that could be a pre-indicator. But, I thought about when he was talking about kids so much, they had, excuse me, ICE had a raid on non-white immigrants or people living here in the United States, and somewhere they rounded up 650 people. And if you think about maybe, even if each one had a couple of kids, that'd be over 1,200 kids that's without parents. And this society will create this perfect scenario. What do you think happens to a kid when he feels that not only one person has done this abuse to him, but an entire system or society? We may be breeding, another generation of emotionally disturbed people. And I think white people are good at creating the problem and then analyzing it and taking credit for what you learned from those situations. But if you know all of these things to start with, why would you create a system that will continue to produce victims? Getting so deep as to talk about the D4DR in the human genes, and like Mr. Fuller said, go to the deepest ocean and get a grain of sand and investigate it and break it all down and see what it's made of. But then these genes must be heavily predominant in melanin deficient people, because a lot of these mass murderers, regardless of what the books say, naming one black child and then calling them, like it's some example of changing a law for kids, when the majority, I saw on television not too long ago, 4 boys throwing bricks from an overpass, just like the book described it. And one of the bricks hit a windshield. The driver wrecked and killed himself. So they were all up on murder charges, and the court was doing a dance to try to get these young men off, trying to get one to say that he did it. The one dropped the brick would be the one taking the fall. but all of them were doing the same thing, and all should suffer the same consequences. But the white children, I guarantee you, are not suffering the same consequences as young black kids are. When it comes to abuse, sexual abuse in the schools, or the Catholic schools, for instance, been going on for years, hundreds of years. Then they get a student counselor, a black person in Prince George County, that molest kids. They blast his picture all over the place for several weeks and talk about what needs to be done. Had the administrators all answering questions about background checks. You know, I'm not saying that a background check should not be done, but they should be done across the board, because a lot of these positions are filled by family members or people that they know, and there is no background check. But I'll mute my line on that, Gus. Thanks for taking the call.
Indeed, Mr. Demery 4. Do we have anybody else? Question, comment? They wanted to make sure they shared. Make sure I get in my notes that I took from the second audio segment. Let's see. Woo! He said, a recent study shows that an astonishing 75% of homicides by young people occur when they are high or drunk. So encountering criminal teenagers under the influence is most dangerous. That blockhead says pretty often sobriety would be best. And I think the other part of it is one of the worst combinations in the known universe is whites, alcohol. Next. Man, now I did not take the time to get, I don't even know his name. They didn't release it. Thank God I didn't waste it. Do you all remember the case? It was in the Midwest. It was like Colorado, Idaho, one of those Midwest states. It was a black child. He had been adopted by a white family, and he was 17. He was a teenager, and he was sodomized. I think he might have even had mental handicap, and he was sodomized, raped by a white male on the team. It was a group effort. They said it was encouraged by the faculty and coaching staff. They inserted a wire coat hanger in his rectum and kicked it. All of these attacks on this black male child. Folks should remember that. It was from, I think, 2016 when this was reported. His family filed a lawsuit. Adopted white parents filed a lawsuit. That's what I had in mind when I read the paragraph. He said the offender was grammar school student I'll call Joey. He sodomized a 7-year-old boy in the school bathroom. Though he acted alone, he was aided by some astonishing negligence on the part of the school system and the principal in particular. The school district claimed Joey's rape couldn't have been predicted, but there had been a striking pre-incident indicator. A month earlier, Joey had actually been arrested for victimizing another boy the same way in the same bathroom. Now, he says he made up the name and everything. I'd be willing to bet a hefty sum on this one too. OJ will be mentioned again in the book. Joey, in quotes, was a white boy, because I do not think if this had been a black child that they would have demonstrated astonishing negligence in allowing little black Joey to continue to perform this way in school. They certainly would not have assigned another student. You'll be the guardian for little black Joey. I cannot imagine that at all. They would have paired him up with Officer Slam. That'll be your partner to go to the restroom. Yet again, if I'm, being in error, you can speak up and let me know. But it'd be a Tamir Rice type of situation. I just don't see black children get treated with astonishing negligence when it comes to discipline in school systems. Anywhere in the world, not just here, in fact. Principles don't turn away. I'll leave it there. When he says it's me, that basically he was giving the analogy that if a student were to stand up and say it's me, I'm the child on child sexual offender, and the principal turned away, they generally do not turn away when a black child is accused of anything, much less raping another child. They can be accused of natural hair. Well, that's in the policy. Niggers can't have natural hair. That's going to be a expulsion right there. That generally is the type of thing that happens unless I am greatly confused about white supremacy racism. Anybody think Joey was black? Make sure we get that in. Anybody think I'm talking crazy? They think Joey was black? That's what I thought. We'll be here tomorrow.
No.
All right, on. That's what I thought. If you're in the archives, you didn't get to participate live, and you think Joey could have been a black child, that black children get away with this sort of thing all the time, let me know. We'll make sure to read your commentary. That'll be guaranteed next week, same time. We'll be here tomorrow for Workplace Racism, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Compensatory call-in on Saturday. Thomas is elated. Cannot wait. Saturday compensatory call-in, 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern. We will be looking forward to hearing the commentary from What a Week on the plantation in some respects. I will just conclude that, that the last point that I made about that child not being able to be a black person, I think is important, and I think that's an act of racism, white supremacy, and just like I say, he's not mentioned racism at all in the book. That automatically huge, in my view, conscious act of racism, but particularly for instances like that, and what I said about the movies, black boys and black girls are not allowed to function with that type of freedom. They do not get affluenza and the other excuses to exonerate and allow their mischief and or sodomy to continue. That just does not happen with it. They changed the laws with this young black child. He wasn't presumed innocent. It was, we're going to lock this nigger child up so that he never steps foot again. I don't care if he's 12, 10, 5, whatever. He is out of here. That was Willie Bosket. Make an example out of you. Tamir Rice. That's what happens. That not being pointed out, the same thing I said with the movies. Did he list any movies where you got a black male actor who's doing that? I didn't hear anybody else mention one either who gets to do all that and they get the girl. They're not the villain. They're still the good guy. Flagrant acts of racism, white supremacy, in my view. Thanks for the folks who listened live, participated. I hope it was worthy of your time and energy. If you have a thought on connections or just things, parallels, things that have stood out with what's happened over the past week as we are moving through this book, feel free to write that in as well, and we'll share. With that, man, let me read that again. What did it say? A recent study shows that an astonishing 75% of homicides by young people occur when they are high or drunk. So encountering criminal teenagers under the influence is most dangerous. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. In addition to being sober, let's be buckled up every time we are in a vehicle, passenger or driver. Let's do everything we can to minimize contact with race soldiers, badge or no. That would include not being on the cell phone if we are behind the wheel, minimizing as best we can. With that, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.